Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Let's pledge allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Our first order of business here, item number 2 on our agenda, is the adoption of our agenda. And so with that, I'll ask the commissioners if there are any additions, changes, deletions, or other you'd like to add to the agenda.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, I have 2 amendments. One is an addition under new business. It will be item G, and it is a proposal for architectural services for the Welcome Center restroom project. And we have that paper in front of us that was sent in this afternoon to Shannon and Mr. Nally. So.
Okay.
The second is under the very next item, item 12. We already have a closed session scheduled for the purpose of discussing property acquisition. We need to add, when we go into that closed session, also GS 14318.11 sub A sub 6 for the purpose of discussing personnel matters.
Okay. Would anybody else have any other changes, additions? No? I'll entertain a motion to adopt the agenda as amended.
I'll make that motion to adopt it.
Bob makes the motion. A second?
Second.
Second by Stephen. Any discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, item number 3 is the mayor's communication, and I have the honor, though a little disappointing to have this, of announcing that our town clerk, Andy Calvert, will be leaving the town, and she'll be spending some time at home, Andy, I believe, with her daughter. We are all here in the staff and the council very sad to see Andy go. She's been with us now since 2006, I believe, or 2005, I believe. And so we have a couple things here. First, we have a resolution that I'd like to read in a second to recognize Andy for her outstanding accomplishments, and then we have a little presentation for Andy. So let me read the resolution. This would be resolution number 180109. This is honoring the dedicated service of Andrea Calvert. Whereas Andrea Calvert began working for the town of Lake Lure on August 15, 2005 and was promoted to the position of town clerk on May 1, 2011, and whereas Andrea Calvert has served the town in a dedicated and conscientious manner over the past 13 years and has decided to leave her position as town clerk to further her education and pursue other career opportunities, and whereas through her work Andrea Calvert has advanced the office of town clerk and displayed the highest degree of professionalism and integrity, and whereas Andrea Calvert has served the Lake Lure community faithfully, now therefore be it resolved that on behalf of the town of Lake Lure Town Council and the citizens of the town of Lake Lure and the Lake Lure Town Council thanks Andrea Calvert for her dedicated service to the town of Lake Lure and wishes her well in her future endeavors. Read, approved, and adopted this 9th day of January 2018. So, Andy, thank you very much for your service. And I believe Ron Nally has a little gift for you if you come in front here and accept a little thank you. This is, I believe, Ron will introduce this. This is from staff.
You car.
Do you need some assistance?
Yeah, I think I got it here.
Okay.
We wanted to do something just a little bit special for Andy, since we certainly are going to miss him and appreciate her work. So we've gotten you this clock. I'm going to read this. It says, "To Andy, your time here will not be forgotten." Thank you.
Yeah. Mr. Mayor, if I may, I make the motion that we approve resolution number 18-01-09, honoring the dedicated service of Andrea Calvert.
Thank you, Stephen. Is there a second? I'll second. Second, John. Any discussion? There being done. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right, that brings us to item number 4 on our agenda, which is the town manager communications. Ron, you have some items you want to report on?
Yes, Mayor, thank you. Donnie, if you'll come on up and give us a quick update on the hydroelectric plant and the dam update.
Good evening. All of our parts are at the hydraulic plant. We had, the holidays and the weather bad, our engineer hasn't made it back up since they have been delivered. We do have everything, and we've taken inventory of everything, and everything's here. We're waiting on him and some alignment pins, and then we can get started putting the little generator back together. Welder's gonna be here in the morning to start some more scab repairs on the pin stock and some of the bad places that's giving us some trouble and weak holes and getting thin. So he'll be here in the morning to start that.
Any anticipated issues? Anything you think might become a problem?
In my 20 years at the hydro plant, I hate to say and jinx myself. I don't expect, they did a test fit at the powerhouse and everything fit okay, but you just can't never tell till you start getting it.
Right,
back.
understand.
But I don't think anything's, as far as what they've done or machined or anything, I don't think.
Okay, right.
You have a timetable?
I do not. It's just gonna depend on how our engineer and what he can, work his schedule around and, get up here to supervise the work. I would say roughly a month, but that's not concrete.
Okay. I would hope that if you do run into any problems, that you come online immediately. And of course, let your supervisor and Ron know, and Ron let us know.
I would ask if there's some way to pin the guy down to a schedule.
Yeah.
I think we know, it's that important that we pin the guy down to a schedule and then ask for a commitment from him.
Well, Donnie, we can't run the generator until March 15th.
I understand that, but we might be having this discussion March 15th. That's what I want to avoid.
Right. I don't think it's gonna take us that long. I'll get with him and see what we can figure out, and how his schedule and stuff looks, but we should be, within a month, give or take, I think we'll be ready, but we won't know anything about testing or how it operates or anything until backup lakes operate in range.
Even if he could give you, as Commissioner Kilby suggested, give you a tentative date when you talk to him. It'll take me 2 weeks to get it installed, or 3 weeks, something, barring any unforeseen circumstances. So,
Don, there's no problem giving us updates, I don't suppose. If something unforeseen crops up that might make it take a little bit longer, give us an update on that if you would, please.
Can I ask another question, Donnie? At what point, is it 3.5 feet, we can't generate after 3.5 feet?
Well, we can generate with the big one to 3.5 feet, then it uses a lot of water.
And that's all due to the intake, where the water stops in the
Correct,
intake.
right. We can operate the small one past that, but it uses so little water that we can, if it has to be a dry condition for the little one to drop it. If we have too much water coming in, the little one will hold it, but it will not drop it unless it's fairly dry. We can generate past 3.5 feet, absolutely, with the little one, but
How far?
to 5 feet, to 5.5 feet. This depends, it's really hard once we get that low, because we only have so much surface in the intake to work with, and then it sucks so much when people blow their leaves and debris and stuff into the lake. Everything makes its way to that intake eventually.
In past years, when the lake's lowered, have we always stopped generating at 3.5 feet?
No, because we'd had the little one.
So we would keep generating even after it was down to 5 feet.
Yes, we may have to use the floodgates as well to get it down to whatever level, that we're shooting for. But we could still generate that low with the small generator.
Okay, thank you.
So Donnie, when you get this all put back together to your satisfaction, doesn't it have to be tested then?
Well, we can't really do any tests with it until we get enough water back.
That was my point. So even though we can put it all back together and it looks good, went back easy, we really need to be able to test it to know that it's completely repaired and
Right.
operational.
What
We
we'll
can't
do
do
is,
that.
once we get it back installed, we'll spin it and make sure that the oiling systems, everything's okay, and we're not having any major water leak issues or oil leak issues or anything, but that's about as far as we can go. We can't really put it online until we get back up. We may can, when we start letting the lake come back up in March, we may can turn it on for a few hours and just to test and see how hot it gets, and if we're having any kind of power frequency or power factor issues or anything like that. But until we, can run it for 24 hours or at least 8 hours, and somebody be there and watch it, then we really won't know. But I don't suspect we're gonna have any problems like that.
So I saw in your report this month that, I believe for the month of December it was, that we generated sufficient electricity where the income was $63,000, is that?
Yeah, and that's really hard to do with one generator in the lake down.
So then from that, and this may relate to discussions we might have later, so then every month that our lake is drawn down, we don't generate somewhere in that order of magnitude of revenue for the town, is that right?
Right. From January 3rd is when we got back down to 5 feet until we get back to normal operating procedures sometime mid-March, early mid-March. We won't make any money.
All right. Thank you, Don.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The board had requested a detailed breakdown of the repairs that had been done to the small generator. That's included in your packet. You have a copy of that. Please don't hesitate to see Donnie or myself or David if you need additional information. Dredging update, we'd just like to let everybody know that the town has terminated the contract with Rowboat Incorporated. We are now working on alternatives for finishing out the dredging season, and we also have indications from the state that we can ask for an extension to our grant, so the grant money will not be a factor in the decision for this year. But we will be back in touch with the board as we have updates. It's that time of year. My agreement with the town requires an employee evaluation, usually held in January. I have forms that I've used for the last, say, 10, 15 years. It was modeled after the form from the International City County Managers Association. I'll be distributing those to the board, asking you to fill those out, and just requesting at some point the board set a special meeting to discuss that evaluation with myself.
I'm glad you said fill them out. I was wondering if they were already filled out or not.
I could work on that if you need me
Okay,
to.
no.
As you'll know, the World Equestrian Games is coming in September 2018. Some exciting things going on. There is a steering committee that has been established. It's the Hickory Nut Gorge Steering Committee that the town is taking part in. They have some key areas of concentration that we just wanted to pass on. Training for our frontline folks in restaurants and hotels. Even our police officers will likely take part of that training. Event programming, community appearance, marketing and branding, and then a internal community transportation system. Again, we're expecting, and some say that this is exaggerated, but close to 500,000 folks over that 2-week period. Not all of them will make it to the Lake Lure area, but we suspect that quite a few will. And so we want to make sure that we're prepared for that, and I think it'll be helpful for these smaller committees to start getting together and talking about ways we can improve our services to those folks. If you have an interest in something that I've said, either board or someone out in the audience, if you have an interest in one of those key areas, if you'll please let me know, and we can certainly work on committee assignments. So let me know if you have an interest in that. Finally, just a quick update. About 2/3 of the concession agreement is completed. Expect that within a matter of days, the rest of that will be done. We're down to just the, what I would guess is the legal ease that the town attorney helps with. Once that's done, we'll get feedback from, of course, Lake Lure Tours and the steering committee, and we should have something to you pretty soon.
If we don't do it at next month's council, then we're gonna have to do it, actually, we need to do it soon. Could we set a target date of February the 7th during our special meeting to review that and have it finalized? Does our attorney think he can get through the review of it by that time?
Yeah.
And do you think you can get the feedback from the
I think so.
involved parties?
Yeah, the steering committee, two members of those, we work pretty quickly once we
Yeah,
get
we
it.
need to get that done. So,
Okay.
so it's February 7th target date? Sound good to everybody?
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
And finally, just a word of thanks to everybody who participated in the polar plunge. It was the coldest on record, 93 plungers, several hundred people out watching. We'd love to announce that our tug of war winner for the first year was the town of Lake Lure. So thank you, Ron Morgan and the fire department, for their tugging. So, congratulations.
Yeah.
All right, so unless you have questions, that concludes my report.
You're not gonna announce the winner of the race.
Oh, I'm sorry. You go ahead and do that.
Yeah.
That's terrible.
I'd rather for you to do it. It's Kiefer.
That's why I wanted you to do it. I went blank on his name as soon as you said it. Yes, and congratulations to Kiefer. He blew
The only one
everybody.
in town.
Blowing it out of the water. He finished that race in an amazing amount of time, so it was a great job. I
Now, wait a minute,
apologize.
wait a minute, you didn't mention third.
Oh, gee.
Yeah, third place.
Y'all go ahead.
My grandson Christian was third.
I should have wrote all of that down. You can tell I wasn't prepared.
Mr. Mayor, I do have a couple of questions I'd like to ask David, if you don't mind, from Public Works regarding your department report, sir. Yeah. I noticed on December 6th, you got a pump truck to remove the grease from the manhole in front of Larkins. What is that all about?
Larkins, in my opinion, has a grease trap at their facility that appears that has not been maintained in the past, which has let that grease from their restaurant come into the town's wastewater collection system.
Wow.
This was a big deal.
Yeah.
I personally worked out there over a day myself. I had rooter out there twice with jet rodders, and I had a pump truck there the most part of a day, which ended up being pretty expensive. And Ron has asked that I create a bill which will be voted on. But it has been cleaned out. The line is open back up. But I talked to Ron about this. I'm gonna set up time to go around 2 restaurants, one-on-one, and start inspecting their grease traps, or if they have them or not. I don't know what's been done in the past, but that's a big deal. Had that manhole not caught that grease and that got on down into the main trunk line, we could have had some big problems.
Yeah.
So luckily, you know, it was called, it was taken care of. So I did have to turn it into the state because there was a spill into the waters of the state. It was a small spill, but I turned it in, all the paperwork's been done, and we got a notice of deficiency back from the state because of that. Like I say, the line is open, it's running, it's working good, and we're gonna try to change things up a little.
So we're gonna be billing Larkins for that expense.
Yes.
Has that been discussed with them yet? Do they know it's coming?
It has not.
Okay.
I actually went by there to talk with the manager, and I didn't catch it.
Okay.
But
And the second side of this, doesn't, the grease traps for restaurants, isn't that also a health department issue? Have they been notified?
the health department, they initially, when they put them in, they make sure that they're done. But beyond that,
When they do
it's
the routine?
responsibility
Yeah.
of the town.
Okay.
to actually go out and make sure that they're doing what they're supposed to do.
Okay.
I've been here a year now. I don't know what's happened in the past, what reason, but that's a problem that didn't happen overnight.
Yeah.
And it definitely needs to be addressed, and if we've got that issue there, we may have it in other places.
Pretty significant.
So we're gonna start working in the right direction on that, and
Good.
hopefully we can get ahead of it before we have another speed.
Could be something to meet with the health department about too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
David, is it typical for towns to inspect grease traps, or what, how do we keep up with that?
Yes, sir, it's not written in stone that you have to, but it's a very good idea from my past experience.
Yeah.
Of doing this for years and years. If you don't go check behind them.
Well, I think we need to make that, get that worked into our system as, you know, however we need to do it, so that there's a follow-up and,
Yes, sir, I agree.
yeah.
Because if you don't, this same sort of thing will happen again.
Sure.
You know, and it could be worse next time than it was this time. I did speak with the manager out there, and, I think it was simply, he was not aware.
All right.
Because I said, you know, have you got a grease trap? And he was super nice. He said, yes, sir, we sure do. I said, when was the last time it was cleaned? So I'm not knocking him.
No, got it, yeah.
Education would go a long way, you know, making people aware, going out and checking and seeing what's there and letting them know, getting them in the routine of having that done. And I think it would work out for the best.
A few others may not know where it's at.
Do what?
A few others may not know where the grease trap is.
Right.
Right.
Another thing in your report, there's 2 or 3 mentions of the EV, electric vehicle charging station. And I know with Mr. Baldwin from Community Development and you and your guys from Public Works and contributed work of Commissioner Cameron to do the electric for free, that is now operational. But I understand there's a red tag only because of the poles in front don't have concrete inside them.
The bollards we
Yeah.
put up in front have to be filled with concrete per the building inspection. That was not in the plans that we got, so we didn't do it.
Simple fix, though.
It's a very simple fix, and then we'll have to paint the bollards if we can get a warm day.
So there is an electric vehicle charging station in Morse Park now. It's right to the right side of the Welcome Center. You'll see the little stand out there, almost behind the ATM. That's there for use for charging your electric vehicles at no expense to the citizens. So, I noticed the guardrail had been replaced on Boys Camp Road from where the tree had damaged it. Great job. I understand that was a spur of the moment, lucky fix that saved the town about $600 or $700.
Well, I happened to come through town and I seen the contractor that does all the guardrail work for DOT in the county. And I said, hey, while you're in town, you got any extra material? And by chance, they did.
Good.
And so I called their supervisor and talked to him, and he said, yeah, we'll be, if it's no more than 40-something foot, so we've got enough material to fix it. He said, we can fix it while we're here and save you the extra cost of having to come from Greensboro. Yeah, and so I came and talked with Ron, it was approved, so we went ahead and had him fix it while it was here.
Thank you. Great job. Thank you.
David, I have one question. The third item in your monthly report, met with DOT at Spruce Hill about mud washing into the highway. Yes. Where is that located?
That's,
Just past Willowbrook,
Yes,
going around that curve,
where that log cabin is.
just past Willowbrook.
On the main road?
Right.
every time it comes hard rain stuff, that stuff washes out in the road, and it's just a muddy mess.
Well, it's dangerous too with the freezing. Like
Yeah,
that.
it surely is, and, so Public Works, not just myself, me and my help, several times have been out and removed that mud out of the state road, you know, because it's dangerous, it freezes, it makes it a mess and everything else. And so me and Dean and Clint met with DOT out there with the hopes that they would offer a solution, you know. They had all kind of good ideas, they just weren't willing to participate
Is that something that's the responsibility of that property owner to prevent that?
I think at the end of the day, I think so. There's numerous property owners up there, including the town of Lake Lure, that owns property up in there. I'm not sure who all it is or who all is involved.
Is that a town road?
No, sir.
Private?
It's private.
Yeah, and I don't know if you recall, we were given several lots up on that road, and that's how we became a property owner up there. Those lots were deeded to us.
Should we go ahead and work and see what the cost would be to put a trench in there with some riprap and liner and then see what the cost was and split it equally?
It's definitely doable. It can be done. But from what I'm seeing, it's a good time to bring it up because there's another place in town that's a private drive that I've been approached. The guys want us to fix stuff. I look back, and Andy actually pulled minutes back from a meeting back a few years ago where the board had questioned Public Works working on a private drive and done a resolution or whatever to where that would not happen again.
Right, but since we're a property owner,
Right.
we would have a shared interest in it.
I am more than willing to do whatever, but under the instruction of y'all.
Well, I'd like to make a motion and a recommendation that you and Ron get together on that and get a proposal together, whether it's a contractor or not.
Right.
But what I'm looking at, we need some drainage in there, probably a culvert to tie into the other ditch line
I
there.
think so. I think
And it may
30
even,
foot of pipe in there and some gravel and a little work could go a long way.
maybe even some asphalt or paving up 30, 40 feet up there to about, but
Well-
we need to get on it. This has been a long time.
Yeah, now, I agree, and the town being now a sharing property owner of that area, but I don't think the town should foot the whole expense.
No, I said
And if,
split it
yeah,
up
if they can get with the
equally based
property
off-
owners, get them to share it.
Right, that's correct.
Is that your motion then?
That's my motion.
Okay, is there a second to this motion? Then we'll discuss
I'll
it.
second.
All right, for the purpose of discussion.
Yeah.
Another question.
Yes, sir.
Since we're going this way on this,
Because we are a partial property owner, yes.
up here across from what will at some point be the new ABC store,
Right.
the little gravel road that goes up through there. The guy that lives on it has approached me about a washout there, saying that it is a town street, needs to be fixed. It's not a town street. It is considered a private street. This is the street that I was telling you the board of commissioners in the past has said, do not work on. The town also owns property there as well.
Up that street?
Yes. That, it actually loops around and comes back into Memorial Highway. It's an unopened street. But it is, part of that property is deeded to the town of Lake Lure. So if we're gonna do it, I would
Well,
love to
no.
hear from y'all which way you would like to go with it.
If we are-
because as soon as I leave here tonight, I'm sure I'll get a phone call tomorrow.
It's a good starting point to know is what would be required and what the cost is.
Yeah.
And then we could, take the next step is to see, how we would go about funding it.
Right, go ahead.
And if you can research that by the time we have our retreat next month with capital improvement and your individual department goals and objectives, if you could provide some numbers by then, that'd be helpful. So,
All right, so we have a motion and a second and some discussion. If there's,
Let me just clarify, we probably need a policy directive from the board in this matter, so could we include that as part of the information that you've already asked for?
To provide us a new policy directive, a suggested policy directive.
Yes, sir.
Why don't we make that as a second motion since we have this one on the floor? Is that okay?
I didn't realize this one was a motion.
He made the motion.
Suggestion, okay. Then second,
yeah, well,
Yeah.
if you want to do, is everybody in agreement with that? We'll go ahead and vote on this motion, then we'll take the policy thing. All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign? All right, now, the policy
Explain that to us.
issue.
What you need.
As David said, y'all have already got a policy in place that directs staff on this matter. So what we would need is to revise or develop some type of new policy that would allow this to take place under certain conditions.
But where we are a co-property owner.
Yeah.
If that's the case, that's
Yeah.
right. So,
And as we sit here right now, we don't know what that is, so I guess
That's right.
the first step would be for you to provide us all a copy of where we are now, and then we could take that, and if we need to go from there and amend it, we could do so. But, I think we would need to look at that first.
If you don't mind, show us what we got now and then what your recommended amendment is.
okay.
Well, he said Andy had already pulled the resolution that was made back then, so.
When was
Mike,
that
you know,
done?
Was that in 9, 9 or 10, somewhere?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
Yeah.
let's
Because
look
the
at
the
it.
same issue came up in the
Yeah.
past.
I'll look at it.
All right, good. Anything else on that? No?
Nope.
Nope. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. Okay, any other questions for staff before we move on? If not, where we are is item number 5 on the agenda, which are public hearings, and we have 2 of them this evening. One of them deals with the sign regulation, and the second one with the land clearing and grading. Shannon Baldwin is the presenter, or I guess the knowledgeable staff person on both of these, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to convene the first public hearing, which is on proposed amendment to Article 10, sign regulations, Section 92.155H, signs exempt from permit requirements of the zoning regulations for the town of Lake Lure. I'll ask Shannon to go ahead and present what's contained in here, and I will note up front that we have had no one sign up to speak on behalf of the public. If anybody changes their mind or would like to do that while Shannon's presenting, you're welcome to do that.
As the mayor just spoke, this amendment is related to Article 10, sign regulations, Section 92.155H, signs exempt from permit requirements of the town regulations, town of Lake Lure. So this is a provision we have in our regulations that basically says if you are a commercial property and you want to erect a for sale sign or for lease sign, you can do that. You don't have to secure a permit, just like a realtor wants to place a real estate sign on a residential property. They don't have to secure a permit from the town, but we do regulate these commercial signs, and currently the regulations basically are 12 square feet. It'll be a 3x4 sign, which is a half sheet of plywood. That's what we currently have. We have seemingly a number of commercial properties we're trying to encourage folks to look at, invest in. And so it did come up, the planning board discussed possibly increasing the size of those commercial signs on commercial property. Again, it's just a sign that would say for sale or for lease. And so looking at other jurisdictions, the standard size really was a sheet of plywood. And that just seems to be fairly consistent across industry standards. So that's what we're talking about, is increasing it from 12 square feet to
32.
32?
to 32, which is a little more.
Right.
Yeah, but that's a standard sheet of plywood, 32 square feet, 4 by 8.
Yeah.
So that's it in a nutshell.
And the staff's recommendation is for approval of the ordinance, right?
The planning board recommends.
Planning board.
Yep, town council approved this as it's submitted, and there is a recommended motion in your packet.
Okay, which we will deal with later in the agenda.
Okay?
Okay, so with that background information, does anyone in the public still want to make a comment on that? Opportunity? Anybody on the council have any comments? All right. If there be none, then I will entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll make that motion to close this hearing.
Second to that?
Second.
Stephen, second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign? All right, Shannon, if you'd stay right up there. We have the second public hearing. This is on proposed amendment to Article 8, land clearing and grading, Section 92.119, and Section 92.120 of the zoning regulations of the town of Lake Lure. So Shannon, would you
Sure.
give us a...
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I won't quote the sections again. This has to do with provisions in the zoning regulations relative to land clearing and grading. And really, these are the tree protection provisions that are embedded in those regulations. After test driving this ordinance now for a number of years, staff came together and we said, you know, there's some things about this that could be more effective, more efficient, but there's no net reduction in tree standards. It's a matter of creating a more effective, efficient program that Clint can operate and oversee and manage. So our first round of review is strictly based on efficiency and effectiveness. There's some redundancy. We eliminated the redundancy. Some things that just impossible for Clint to enforce. And then also, we wanted to highlight sections in these provisions with italicized words that would reference other sections, so these sections, folks would have a little bit more difficult time misinterpreting what this is saying, and Clint can back and forth with these so that he can impart better understanding as to what they mean. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. It does come to you recommended for approval as written by the zoning planning board.
The cross-referencing that Shannon mentioned makes it easier when someone's going through and looking at one set of regulations to note that there's another regulation that may apply somewhere else. So that we've made it a point to insert some of those, or insert that where it was appropriate.
Correct.
So these areas that we're taking out here, in a sense, is a lot of removal here. The purpose of that is that it's actually referenced in a different regulation. You're saying no relaxation in the tree preservation standards, is that?
That's correct.
That's the basis of saying that, right?
That's accurate.
Okay. All right. Well, having heard that, is there, I'll leave open opportunity for public comment. If there's anybody, having heard that wants to comment, you're welcome to do so. All right. Not seeing anyone then, coming forward, I would entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll make that motion.
All right, second?
Second.
Stephen? All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
Mr. Mayor, if I may,
Yes, sir.
on both of these, the state has passed new requirements relative to amendments, and what they require that we do is map these amendments against our comprehensive plan, if you have a comprehensive plan. So those are now embedded in these motions, and you will see those every time we have another amendment that comes before you. You'll see how we've mapped that against our comp plan, and all that is embedded in these motions.
That's good practice.
Thank you, sir.
All right, thank you.
One more thing, Shannon, while you're there, just with the council's tolerance here, in the future, I'd like to see the review of the size that's required before you get a permit for grading. Right now, it's 10 feet by 10 feet. So if you dig a 100-foot ditch or a 50-foot, 2-foot wide ditch, technically you're supposed to get land disturbance. And just for contractors digging ditches, every time you dig one more than 50 feet or 40 feet, you're in violation. So I'd like for them to take it up. And most areas I've always seen there's been a half acre or a full acre requirement before this is done. You still have to do soil erosion measures and all that. But ours say 10 by 10. I'm sorry, that's just, you can't park a machine without disturbing 10 by 10 areas.
And that's the surface area only.
Yes.
You could go 20 feet down 10 by 10, and it doesn't make a difference in the permit requirement.
But if you dump, honestly, if you dump 1 or 2 dump trucks of dirt, you're in violation.
Yep.
We've had a lot of discussion about this, and it's pretty universal that everybody wants this addressed. So I concur, and I think we really, for the zoning to take it up, we need to do a motion.
We do, and what we have, Clint is responsible for this one, but we're reviewing the soil sedimentation control ordinance, the land disturbance regulations. And so there are new state standards, and we have to comply with those state standards. Clint is waiting for the state to basically finish their model. Once they finish that model, then we have to bring our program into compliance. And we can do that in one fell swoop. When we do the review, we can make these kind of simple changes to the regulations as we move forward. And so maybe your motion ought to be to include this into the review.
To include these
That's
new
right.
state requirements. Well, I'll make that motion that we look at our soil disturbance program, bring it in compliance with the state requirements, and then also look at the minimum disturbance area with those such as dumping dirt or something of these issues.
Okay,
I'll
this
second that.
second. John, any further discussion about that? Here? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right, very good. Thanks, Shannon. I
Thank you,
appreciate
Shannon.
that very much. Okay, now, for your listening and watching enjoyment, we have a couple of multimedia presentations, I understand, some PowerPoint presentations. The first one is, deals with our 2016-2017 audit, and I believe we should have Brian Lee here to make this presentation. He's with Martin Starnes and Associates. They are our auditors. So, Brian, if you'd come to the mic and welcome.
Thank you. Good evening.
Thanks for being here.
All right, thank you for having me here tonight. My name is Brian Lee. I'm a CPA and an audit manager with Martin Starnes and Associates out of Hickory. And I'd just like to start off by thanking you for providing us the opportunity to perform your audit. It's a relationship that we don't take for granted, and we hope to serve you for many years to come. Some of the highlights from the audit this year, we did issue an unmodified opinion, so that is a clean opinion, and that is in the opinion letter that's at the front of your financial statements. This is due to your staff, starting with Ron, Sam, Anita. Everyone that we deal with during the audit is very pleasant, very helpful, and they make the process go very smoothly. So we appreciate all their help and all their work to get the audit completed. One of the government standards that we implemented this year was GASB 73, and that is bringing your law enforcement officers' liability, their separation allowance liability, onto the books in full. So that was one of the standards that we implemented this year, and one of the ones that will be coming up is the OPEB liability, so that'll be coming on in full next year.
Which liability is that?
OPEB, other post-employment benefits, so that's health
Okay.
insurance, dental, vision. So in the past, we've taken that liability and amortized it and divided it by 30 years and booked 1 year at a time. And so the new standard coming down from the state is that we pick up all 30 years at once. So what you'll see is a large liability for OPEB, but it won't affect any of your budgets or any operations or anything like that. It's just going to be in our front schedules of the financial statements. So a little about fund balance. Assets and deferred outflows, less liabilities and deferred inflows is fund balance or net position for each fund. There's 5 classifications of fund balance. Non-spendable, this is items like inventory. Restricted is an external restriction such as Powell bill funds that can only be used for a specific purpose. Committed, which is an internal commitment that the board can make and only the board can undo. Assigned is also an internal restriction, but it doesn't have any legal standing. It's just like appropriating fund balance in next year's budget. And unassigned is the remainder. So the LGC has a calculation for available fund balance, and this is how they compare municipalities across the state. So it begins with total fund balance, subtract out non-spendable items, subtract out stabilization by state statute, and you're left with your available fund balance. So here's that calculation. Total fund balance at the end of 2017 was just under 2.5 million. Inventory of $780, stabilization by state statute of about $765,000, which left us with about 1.7 million of available fund balance. That compares to about 1.83 last year. One thing I would like to mention is that stabilization is really your accounts receivable, and so that went up about 200,000 from last year, so that makes up more than your change from prior year. The way that the LGC compares municipalities is to look at available fund balance as a percentage of your general fund expenditures. And each month is worth about 8%, so you've got just under 5 months of available fund balance to spend if all of your funding were to be cut off for some reason. So it did decrease a little bit, but that's due to that increase in accounts receivable. Here's a look at total fund balance in the general fund over the past 5 years. You can see that it increased about 280,000 this year, and over the 5-year span, it has increased almost $1 million. General fund summary for revenues and expenditures. You see that revenues increased about 260,000 and expenditures about 100,000. And we flipped this year from a deficit to net income. The top three revenues in the general fund, we have ad valorem taxes at 52%, unrestricted intergovernmental at 26%, and that's franchise taxes, sales and use taxes, taxes coming from the state. And we have permits and fees at about 10%, and all other revenues make up about 12%. So I'll look at the top three revenue classes. Ad valorem taxes stayed very consistent from the prior year, up about 2%. Unrestricted intergovernmental revenues dropped by about 60,000. This is an indicator of activity in your area, economic activity. And so it did drop by about 60,000, but the state did also reallocate the way that they distribute some of those intergovernmental revenues. And permits and fees increased from about 350,000 to 438, and the biggest factor in this was the boat fees. Top three expenditures in the general fund, public safety at 35%, cultural and recreation at 26%, general government at 13%, and all other departments make up 26%. Those are transportation, environmental protection, debt service, unemployment, and other special projects. So for general government expenditures and administration, we actually had a decrease of about $15,000, but very comparable to the prior year. Public safety expenditures up about $200,000, and this is mostly due to capital outlay for a few vehicles and vest and some other items for public safety. Cultural and recreation up about $200,000 from the prior year. This is a lot of the investment in the parks and a lot of capital outlay in your park system. This is the overview of the electric fund. You can see that there is no debt in the electric fund right now, so there's no required debt service for last year or for this year. Charges for services did drop about $470,000 from the prior year, and that was due to the pump being down for a large portion of the year and lower water levels overall in the lake. So there was a pretty substantial decrease there, but from what I understand, we do expect that to pick back up this year. Unrestricted net position did fall because of that from about $850,000 to $300,000. The water and sewer fund does have debt. It's DENR debt through the state, and that required debt service dropped a little bit to $132,000. That's just the difference in interest from year to year. Charges for services did increase pretty substantially to $1.2 million from $775,000. The system is expanding and use is picking up, so we hope to see that continue in the future. Unrestricted net position did fall from $268,000 to $37,000. And the last slide I have for you is your reserve funds. The silt removal fund is at almost $150,000. The bridge preservation fund is $75,000, and that hasn't changed from last year. And the capital reserve fund of about $78,000. So I welcome any questions that you have.
I don't have questions about the report itself, but something that we've been trying to do here for a number of years is have do a running year-to-year comparison on operating expense.
Okay.
And it seems to be a lot more difficult to do it in a government setting than in a private setting because it's more defined in the private setting. And my question to you, Brian, is could you guys take what we have and give us and go back several years and we could decide how many would be appropriate, I guess based on how difficult you tell me it's going to be, and do a year-by-year comparison on like total expenses, total income.
Sure.
Without becomes confusing is when we get a grant, it gets lumped in there, and all that really, in my mind, should be below the line.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. You know exactly what I'm looking for.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's something that we can do. I
How
think we've
difficult-
already got the data to do that for you.
How difficult would it be to go back 10 years? Is that too much?
No, that would depend on what we can extract from the system, going back that far. I know that we have at least 7 years, so.
Okay, well, 7 years would be fine.
Yeah, okay.
I know we, when we first started looking at that, we did a comparison in-house that was helpful, but it still didn't get us exactly what we wanted to see. I think that would be extremely helpful.
Okay, yeah, I can certainly do that. So operations in the general fund or overall the entire town?
Yeah, like you were looking at any business.
Okay, sure.
The board of directors gets together and just a simplified form there where you've got your income. Mm-hmm. Maybe 4 or 5 or 6 sources you have, and then the total. Okay. Compared year to year, probably payroll, the biggest expenses, and pull capital out, have capital below the line.
Okay. Yeah, I can absolutely do that.
Good. Well, thank you. I wish I'd asked for that a long time ago.
I have to ask, I don't know if that falls within the terms of the contract that we have with you for the audits that you do for us, so I assume there's going to be some incurred expense in getting that type of report.
If it became something that took a lot of time, we would have to charge for that, but I don't think that would be something.
Okay, thank you. Everybody heard him say it. Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate that.
Yeah, I'm always glad to help anytime you guys have questions like that through the year. We're not looking to nickel and dime you.
Gotcha.
Glad to help anytime.
No, thank you, Ron. Appreciate it.
Okay.
You don't talk like most CPAs that I know. I like you a lot already.
You mean dull?
I wasn't going to say that.
We appreciate your presentation, and we welcome you back.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Thank you.
All right, have a great night. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, our next presentation, I guess Ron is going to give. This is on our 2018 to 2023 capital improvements plan, and how we're going to come up with a plan, actually. So, Ron?
All right, thank you, Mayor. Tonight we get to start our discussions. Hard to believe, but the budget discussions culminate in, I think, late June of the June 26th of the adoption of the budget. But the first part of this process is going through a capital improvement program process. I like to define what is a capital improvement program. It's a flexible financial tool that's used to look into the future to forecast our town's equipment, building, and infrastructure needs. It not only forecasts those expenditures, but also identifies potential revenue sources, which you know is very important. What items do we include in a CIP? We do not use the definition that Brian, did you already leave?
Yeah.
That Brian uses. Ours is a little more expansive, because if we tried to capture everything under $5,000, computers and notebooks, it would just be an impossible task for us, burdensome. So we have a life expectancy of greater than 1 year and a value of greater than $5,000 is our definition. We find that captures most everything, big projects that the town does. So as we look around, we think of all of our buildings. There's the fire department. We think of our trucks. We think of our police cars. We think of our boats, our generator. As you know, we talked about a lot of that this evening, and our golf course. How do we prioritize our CIP projects? First and foremost, if it addresses a health or safety issue, that always gets a higher priority. Second, if it's mandated by some federal or state government or agency. 3, if it's a replacement project, meaning that if we have a vehicle that needs to be replaced because of its age or condition, that would be a replacement project. Or 4 is an expansion item. If it's something that we're not doing now that we would like to start doing, that's the expansion of the project. Give you an idea of how this might work. You have these in your packets. A little bit difficult maybe out there to read. I pulled David's request for street paving. He did a good job with it. He talks about the needs over a 5-year period. Just to show you how this works, you'll see that you have a description of the project, justification on why it's important to the town, you'll see the 5-year range of expenditures that he expects over that CIP plan, and that total requested project cost, which I think is about $900,000 at this point. You'll also see in the upper right-hand corner, you'll see a departmental priority. David puts all of his projects, he might have 10 projects, he puts them in order. They come to me, I put them in priority by organization, and then they are delivered to you. And as you know from the process last year, you adjust, modify that priority schedule, and you come up with a final priority schedule that we use in the adoption of the budget. As I mentioned earlier, you'll also see milestones of when that project should be completed. You'll see the expenditures that we expect, as well as the revenue sources that we plan to pull from. A good example here is that not only we're using tax money, but we're also using POW bill money, which you just heard from Brian, is state mandated money. Can only be used for street expenditures. Each project, each individual project is then pushed into a summary of the department. So you'll see David's 5 or 6 projects there. They're summarized for both revenue and expenditures. They're then put into a larger summary, which includes all the departments. So administration, the board, police, fire, all of those are ranked and prioritized and then forwarded on to the board. As you can see from your totals last year, we had roughly about $15 million worth of projects that were being proposed in the 5-year plan. As you know, there's never enough money to do those, and so the board balances those needs versus the projects, the revenue sources, and comes up with a final adopted plan. We also look at revenues, and Sam provides us a good summary of the revenue projections. We can pull from historical data how much our debt service is, how much normally we spend on capital improvement projects, and then we balance those needs as well. The final step in this process is to develop this overall sheet, capital improvement program, which you saw last year. This is the one I pulled from your work last year. And you can see, just as an example, Morris Park restrooms, which we'll talk about later tonight, was your top priority. And I believe the top, roughly about 15, 16, 17 or so projects were funded in the last budget. Next steps, we're going to review projects, establish priorities, consider the revenue and expenditure impacts. The draft CIP is due to you in February. The CIP public hearing is held in March, and then depending on comments or any other modifications that the board would like to do, we adopt the CIP in March or April. So we, of course, encourage the board's input. We encourage the public's input. We value your opinions, and if you have questions about projects, or if you have a project in mind that we're not working on that you would like to see us start, if you would just come by and see us or the department head. Any questions? No.
Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you all.
All right. Thanks, Ron. Appreciate that very much. Okay.
I'm sorry, didn't you want us to approve the schedule tonight?
That's under your
It's an agenda item.
consent agenda.
Oh, okay, got it.
All right, so that then brings us to item number 7 on the agenda, which are council liaison reports and comments. As you know, each of our council commissioners is assigned one or more of our boards as a liaison, and each month makes a report on the activity of their respective boards during the prior month. So I don't know if there's an order here. Bob, if you want to start us off?
I'll be the easiest one because the utilities board was canceled for this month, so we'll be meeting next month.
All right.
Get that out of the way.
All right, well, John's sitting next to you. John, you
I'm ready.
position to go there? All right.
So the Lake Advisory Board met yesterday. I apologize for my voice. Met yesterday afternoon here at in this room, and had a good meeting. Introduced a new member to the Lake Advisory Board, Michael Yelton. Now, many of you know Michael Yelton. Michael Yelton's a child of the lake. He's been here since he was born, and his grandfather, his father, and nice young man. He actually runs a guide service, not just here at Lake Lure, but all over western North Carolina. And he's actually been a fishing guide all over the west, out west too. So Michael's a good addition to the Lake Advisory Board. the majority of our discussion yesterday, I would have to say, probably focused on the lowering and raising of the lake. And I asked that the Lake Advisory Board begin to investigate and look into the specifics about all that and what all it affects and how it affects what it affects, and so we can have some data to, if we get into situations of making decisions, we'll have some data to be able to do that. So they actually passed out responsibilities to do different things. And you know, Gary's here tonight. He took some of those on to do. Gary's got records that he keeps of, he can tell you how much it rained on March the 31st of 2003, if you want to know, and what time it rained and how much. And, so we've got a lot of great people on that committee that are very well versed and able to do a whole lot of things and come up with a lot of good information. So that was all. Actually, Ron came to the meeting with Lake Advisory yesterday to explain to the LAB about the dredging contract and the cancellation of that. And I appreciate you taking time yesterday to do that. I'm a proponent of everybody hears the same story. We all sing the same hymn off the same page. So I asked Ron to come in and do that. So that worked out fine. Anything, Gary, other than that I missed that need to bring up, you think?
That was about it, John.
Okay, that's our report for Lake Advisory Board.
Okay, thank you. All right, John?
The Zoning and Planning Board met on the third Tuesday of the month here in this room at 9:30. The two items that were discussed were the two items that we had public hearings on tonight. They were both approved and passed along to us. Shannon's given a much better summary of it than I would. And the other, only other point of business was that we adopted our 2018 meeting schedule, which will be the same as it's been in the past, the third Tuesday in the month at 9:30 right here. The Asset Management Board met on December 12th, and the discussion was mostly about some lots that the town owns that were a gift from John Moore, the John Moore that has money, not this John Moore, and that were a gift to the town for the lots over on, some lots on Buffalo Shoals Road, and what we could do with those. And we set our meeting schedule for 9:30 on the 9:30 in the morning in this room on the fourth Tuesday of the month. So that's my report.
Thank you, John. Stephen?
Yes, thanks. The Board of Adjustment met on December the 19th, and they had one case as a vacation rental operating permit. That was approved, and that now brings the total vacation rentals that are active to date to 294. The Parks and Recreation Board met, gotta pull up minutes here and put on my glasses for this fine print. Parks and Recreation Board met on last Thursday, January the 4th. The board unanimously recommended that Jim Walters continue as chair and that Ed Dittmer continue as the vice chair. And they accepted our reappointment of Ed Dittmer and Larry Chalkowski to the board. I don't know what would have happened had they not accepted it, but they wanted them. Things are continuing at Buffalo Creek Park and Weed Patch Mountain. They're looking at an April opening ceremony for the Weed Patch Mountain Trail. So there'll be more information on that as it occurs. In Dittmer Watts Nature Trail, they had 6 large trees that have fallen in the area. 2 of them have already been removed, but there was also a tree fallen in the meadow area. Last month, Ed had all the leaves on the trail, and now he's got all the trees. The Flowering Bridge is doing a great job. They're trying to convert all their lights to LED to save on energy. And the volunteers have undecorated the bridge, but the lights are still up, and they'll be there until February. They're still working on the last, it's not a gazebo, it's at the end of the what?
Trellis.
Not the trellis, at the arbor. Thank you. Thank you. The golf course was down overall for the year by a few rounds, but part of that was due to weather, and part of it was due to where a tree had fallen and taken out power for water and so on. Mentioned the EV charging station earlier, and forgot to mention, of course, that was totally free. $5,000 grant came from Duke Energy for that, and the other $2,500 came from the TDA. So that paid for that electric vehicle charging station. And again, Commissioner Cameron donated his money, and there's actually 2 terminals at it, so 2 vehicles could be charged at one time. The counter is going to be replaced at the Buffalo Creek Park. That's going to cost $580, but it's a very important counter to determine. And of course, Melody Potter reported that there were 93 plungers at this year's Polar Plunge, and you already heard about the Dash and Splash and the Tug of War, and you heard about the first place winner, Mr. Kiefer Moore, and the third place winner, Mr. Christian Cameron. Hernandez, okay, which he's an immigrant from Florida. So, that was basically it on the Parks and Recreation, and that's all I have. Thank you. Oh, no, we'll save that one for after the public comments.
All right, good. Okay, well, thank to all the commissioners for doing that. Hard work of these boards is much appreciated, those of you who serve on there, and I think on behalf of the public, that's a wonderful volunteer effort that we have in this town. All right, that brings us to item number 8 on our agenda, which is the public comment period. And I see in front of me here that there have been 3 members of the public here who have signed up to make comment. I'll take them in the order in which they have signed up. And what I'd ask you to do, as always, is to come forward to the podium here where there's a mic and you can be heard. And please identify yourself and where you live. And then please try to keep your remarks to 5 minutes or less. Hopefully less, if you can. Would be appreciated. So the first name on our list here is Wayne Guffey. Wayne, if you'd come on up.
Thank you for letting me speak. I'm Wayne Guffey. I live in Rutherford, North Carolina. I'm running for sheriff in the upcoming election this year. I retired 2 years ago with 30 years of experience. I will be a sheriff for you, and I'll be a sheriff that will stand with you. I'll be a fighting sheriff. A sheriff is a fight for you, the people in this county. If you want a sheriff that will stand up and say enough's enough, please consider me. Because I've lived here all my life. I've been in law enforcement my whole adult life. This county deserves better. Given a chance, I'll make it better. I'll be glad to answer any questions, any concern that any of you have. It's time to make this county what it's supposed to be, a safer place to live. Thank you.
Thank you, Wayne.
Thank you.
All right. Second on our list is the other Yvonne, Yvonne Anderson. If you would come up, Yvonne.
Yvonne Anderson. I live at 502 Garden Lane, and I'm a permanent resident. I have been here for 18 years, and I really love this town. And two things have been already kind of mentioned this morning, this evening. Ron, he talked about the attractiveness of our town. And I do not think our Highway 64 through our town is attractive. And I'm wondering if anything has been done to ask the state to take care of this road so it does look nice for the equestrian. If you look closely all along 64, it's a mess. The other thing that was brought up was Boys Camp Road. And you were talking about the guardrail that was broken by this humongous tree. Well, the guardrail was fixed, but the tree is down that hill and it is very unsightly. Why is that not removed before the guardrail was prepared? Also, if you look to, as well as you're coming into town on the right, there's another humongous tree that's ready to fall. And any of us that travel on Boys Camp Road, that could fall on any of us when it falls. Now, I do want to say also there were a group of us that spent I don't know how many hours cleaning Boys Camp Road. There was this couple right here, I'm just drawing a blank, Bo. She organized it and we all cleaned it up and it looked beautiful. Well, it's not beautiful anymore, especially since the fire. The fire has made it a mess. There's all kinds of vines hanging down, but that one tree that's ready to fall could hit any of us when it falls. But is this debris going to be there, the fallen tree, where the guardrail was replaced? Is that required to be taken away? Or what?
I would refer, Ron, it seems like there's a issue with respect to the right-of-way in which the town has the rights to maintain and remove debris and so forth, and then there's private property issues when the town attempts to do that on a private piece of property. Can you comment on this?
Right, and I'll probably fumble through this, so David and Ron Morgan back in the back there might have a couple of comments, make sure I'm accurate, but the way I understand it is we have limited right-of-way in certain areas of town. We are responsible for cleaning up to 3 feet of the edge of the road. Ron, is that about right? Ditch line?
You don't have a ditch, it's straight down.
Yeah, so 3 to 5 feet or so. And that's normally what we clean up or are responsible for cleaning up, unless it's our property. If it's our property, we'll clean it up. But on private property, it becomes a little more troublesome. So, David, is that fair to say? Okay.
So is this something we could look into to determine who owns the property and?
I'm sure we could.
But it's very unsightly, and there's another tree ready to fall too.
The reason that she's referred to fell off the bank, it was a big, we actually bigger than what we were equipped to deal with. So we had a tree factor come in and remove it. Once she cut it, that big thing was coming off that hill. We had it cut up and all of it removed from the left side. What actually hit the guardrail and broke it down and went off of the bank, we did not remove. And there, I agree with her, it's unsightly, there's a bunch of it off down through. You know, I'm more than willing to do whatever on the side, but at the same time.
It won't be easy. It's really steep.
She's right. I mean, it will be a major undertaking to remove it out of there. This is an ongoing thing that's going to continue to happen. Those trees, just like she said, are hanging everywhere, and there's going to be a lot more of them where that came from. Is it doable? Yes, sir.
Well, I'm not suggesting we did, just looking into who owns the property and perhaps an owner might take responsibility for.
You mean the property where the tree fell
Where
from?
the tree is,
No.
where the tree
Oh.
resides right now is the rest of
Where it
it.
fell from.
If I could interject here, and I recall when that guardrail was installed, the town did all of the improvement and all the rock on the side of the slope to give the base or make the base available for putting in the guardrail. And all this tree stuff she's talking about, I believe, most of it is on that rock slope or the rock that was put there to establish the base. And so I'm not talking about anything that might have fallen on down into the gully, but the stuff right up by the top there, by the guardrail is stuff the town put in. And that was town established years ago. And when Jerry Gosda was here still, back is when that was built. That guardrail was installed initially. So I don't know if that's now considered town responsibility or it's private property.
But let us take a look at it.
Yeah. But we developed that whole area with the rock for that guardrail.
And as it relates to Memorial Highway and your comments in regards to 64 and the appearance of
Yes.
that, this might be something, Ron, that the, one of the committees that Ron has now organized for preparing for the World Equestrian Games, one of them is the Appearance Committee?
Community appearance.
And I think that is definitely, we've got some people from the Flowering Bridge on this committee. It might be something, you might
You
have.
mean the state?
In an interest.
Can't come along and clean it up?
Well, I think it can, but somebody, I would think the town or some group would need to approach the state about doing it, to bring it to their attention and to ask that they clean their right-of-way. So what I'm suggesting is maybe that is a subject could be addressed as an appearance issue for the town.
Gosh, yes.
Yeah.
If you drive around 64, it's a mess. It truly is.
Yeah.
Okay, that took two of the items that you brought up about the attractiveness and then the boys' camp. And then there's one item that I have been after for some time. Those big evergreen trees that are trying to cover up the sanitation, what is it called?
Oh, the sewage treatment plant.
The sewer treatment plant, yes, yes. Those trees along the highway were planted there for a reason, to hide that treatment plant. Those trees are being destroyed by parasites or kudzu growing on it, and if those trees go, seeing that sewer treatment plant is really very unattractive. So that's just one other item that I thought I'd bring up. As
Yvonne,
far as appearances.
Just so you know, those evergreens that you're talking about, the Leland cypress, they had a infestation, I wouldn't say an infestation, there were some bagworms on them last year. And
Yes.
I mentioned that to it's been a couple of years ago, because it was before Ron. It was when Chris was still
yes.
here. And I mentioned the bagworms, he looked into it, and he said that they had to be treated at a certain time of year. Well, at the time that I noticed them, the worms weren't in there. You had to treat them when they were active. And so he put it on the schedule, and it would be treated, because I know what you're talking about, and you'll just show up one day and it'll be, all the green will be gone if that's
Yes,
not addressed, so.
absolutely. And the kudzu and everything else, there's a tree growing in there. It just needs to be cleaned out so that we
Yeah.
preserve those wonderful trees that have grown so beautifully.
Okay.
So those are my three items. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Yvonne. Okay, and third and last on our list is Phil Rattano. Phil, would you come forward, please?
I want to thank you, excuse me, I want to thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, Town Manager, Town Council. I'm going to be short here. This is with reference to the letter that I sent you on the lake lowering and the lake down. I just want to bring very short couple of items. The financial consequences that it could be, not only to Rumbling Ball Resort, we have 11 colleges coming early May to use the lake for what they classify as spring training. Of these 11 schools, there's about 2 or 3 teams for each, male and female or different weight class. So you're talking almost 30 rowing groups out there. We made commitments to them based on information that was given to us. And as a result, we have concern about how to get back to them, telling the issues. Mr. Kilby, I thank you very much for hearing the fact that the Lake Advisory Committee is looking into it, looking at the consequences. I think this is going to be really an issue as far as credibility with the town, issues associated with the retail, and us. And from what I heard earlier, it could be a financial consequences of up to $150,000 in revenue for the town. So really and truly, I would really like you all to reconsider, to look into this, look at the overall consequences, look at the overall picture, and do what is best for this particular community, for the town, and for the residents, and for the retailers. I thank you very much.
Phil, I agree with you 100%, but I do have one question. I think you said the rollers were coming May 1st, isn't it March 1st?
No, I said March, I'm sorry, if I did, it was meant March 1st.
March 1st was my understanding, but I thought I heard May.
Actually, March the 3rd is when they're going to start to come in.
Okay.
So sorry about that. So we're talking about 11 teams over a 3-week period beginning on March 3rd.
And Phil, also one more thing is that we've also got the Lake Advisory Board looking into it. That's also supposed to be on our February agenda early in that month. So if there's anything we can possibly do, we'll address it at that time also.
Okay, because there's something we would need from you all to at least go back to the colleges and indicate to them this is what the consequences are, this is what it is, or else there's some happy medium somewhere in between. So we're going to need to get back to them. We're holding off right now, but we're going to need to get back to them ASAP. We don't want them to show up and realize that we have an issue. We explained to them last year the circumstances. We were down 9.5 feet well in advance, so they understood it, we understood it, we had different launching areas and everything, but we've got to get back to them.
Would February 9th or something, our meeting's the 7th.
No, our special meeting.
Our special meeting.
But our council meeting.
Council meeting is February 13th.
13th. Is that soon enough? We have one the 7th and one the 13th.
Yeah, I prefer the 7th, obviously.
That's our budget meeting when we're doing that. But
Phil, I understand the full is ideal, but how far down from full can your rowers still get out there and access their craft?
Well, you know, we can feasibly work with the docks that we're going to have to build everything around the 2 to 3 feet level. But the issue here is twofold. If you're going to begin on March 15th, you're going to be at that 5.5 foot level. Twofold, you got to realize that Easter is early this year, and we're going to get a lot of people coming in at the end of March. We're talking about community-wise, and we're just going to be starting to fill up. So it's going to be a major setback, not only for us, but for the entire community, resulting in moving it from the 15th of February to the 15th of March.
Okay.
Okay. Well, we are working, I've been communicating with you. We are working on that. The town considers it a serious issue. The resort represents 1,600 properties, taxpaying properties. And so we will meet with you on Thursday to discuss this a little bit further, get some more information. Ron and I have already today begun sort of a program to look into the actual construction that's going on the shoreline and what exactly are the start and finish, earliest finish project deadlines that could be accomplished, and that will give us some better idea of what we can do in terms of mitigating the early, the date that we have right now. So
Y'all did a good job by laying it out initially, back in the spring, or even in the winter, where everybody's working with that particular time period. But when you're moving along and you're moving the target, then it becomes very difficult.
understood.
Understood. Thanks. Okay. All right. Well, that was our final public comment. Mo, is that are you a late bloomer on the list here? Would you like to say something? That's all right. Come on up. We have a minute for you. Come on. Identify yourself, please, and where you live.
Yes, my name is Maureen Bay, and I live on Deer Trail in Lake Lure. Okay. Just to follow up what Yvonne had to say about trash, there's several people here that know how committed I am. Steve sees me walking in the neighborhood, and I'm always picking up trash. Briefly, I spent hours on the phone with the city, with the state, and also with the county. And apparently, we were put on a list for trash pickup on Route 64 to Polk County line, and also past Ingalls, that's Route 9, right? Yeah, okay. So we were put on a list, but the bottom line is that there is no more labor from the penal institutions. So that means that it falls back onto the county. And they have a long list of things to do, so they can't pick up trash. They also said that they would not allow me and my small group of gals and guys, the trash picker-uppers, to do it, because it was too dangerous on 64, as y'all know. So, and I copied all of my emails to everybody on the board at the time, and I don't know whatever happened with it. I plan to pursue it again in the spring, because I think something should be done.
We appreciate your work on that.
Well, I'll get back on the phone and do it, and if there's something organized already, then I'm willing to help with that. So I think we should do it.
So they have totally eliminated any prison workers?
There's no more penal labor. That's what the county told me.
Only in America.
Yeah. And that's what the state told me. So you have to get put on a list, and I was told several times we were on the list, but I don't see anybody doing it.
Last I heard is prisoners could still be used, but towns that did it had to pay for their transportation to and from, as opposed to what they used to do, where they'd bring them and drop them off and that kind of stuff.
Isn't there an institution in Rutherford?
Yes, Bindo.
Yeah.
Okay, so how far is that?
Well, still, that's the last I'd heard, the way that had to occur to get prisoner labor for that kind of stuff.
I think that'd be a good task for Commissioner Weber to go ahead and pursue that alley.
No,
Good
it wouldn't
idea.
either. No, it wouldn't either.
He's pretty familiar with a lot of criminals. He probably
No.
Well, thank you, Maureen. It's,
Thank you, we do
we'll do
appreciate it.
something on this.
I used
It is
to
a
hire
big
a lot
issue,
of
yeah.
female prisoners out of Black Mountain
All right,
for a hotel.
moving along, we are on now item number 9, which is our consent agenda. We have 3 items on the consent agenda. First off is the meeting minutes adoption from our December 12th regular board meeting here. Then the second item is adoption of the 2018-19 CIP and budget preparation calendar. That was referred to previously. It's the one Ron put together. And then the third and final item is a call for special meeting on February 7th, 2018 at 9 o'clock. This is our annual council staff workshop, planning workshop for the upcoming year, with some emphasis on the budget process. The location of that meeting is still to be determined. I know we're looking at a couple of locations for that. So is there a motion to adopt the consent agenda?
I'll make the motion, we adopt the consent agenda.
Bob, motion, second?
I'll second.
Second, John Moore. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right, item 10, unfinished business. We have 2 items here. The first is the Tryon Bay Circle, reconsideration of the one-way designation. This is an item that I know that the council has discussed at least a couple of times. Mary Ann Sylvie was sort of the point person on this when she was a commissioner here on the board. I know the staff, Ron, has looked into this on a couple of occasions, and you've engaged the police, public works, the streets department for their recommendations and opinion. And I believe at this point, you know, your recommendation is that their proposed solutions, including the one that Mary Ann has been advocating, which I guess is to allow the 2-way traffic there, does not appear to be workable. Is that, what's the status of that, I guess?
Sure. As you know, at your last meeting, which would have been the December meeting, the town council requested that myself and our police chief, public works director meet with Ms. Sylvie, determine if there was an acceptable alternative to either one-way or two-way. Of course, when we did the survey, it was very clear the respondents from the survey did not want to have two-way traffic on Tryon Bay Circle. So we met, and we did actually come up with an alternative that makes most folks happy, I think. It solves a lot of the issues that we learned about in the survey. If you'll remember the comment section that was there at the end of the survey, we've tried to address as much of those as we can. So what we've done is develop sort of a map of how that might look. And the issue on one side, of course, this is the upper side of Tryon Bay Circle. You've got two houses that were given sort of, I guess, a handshake agreement, an informal approval that they could go the wrong way on a one-way street. Of course, you know, we would never, as staff, think that was a good decision. And what we would do is try to, I'm not even sure if that's a legal decision, but what we would do is move those signs back so that one way would start after that driveway, which would allow two-way traffic in that area. On the other side of Tryon Bay, right past the two-lane bridge, there's another pull-off that would allow cars to safely pass up to that point. And so we have talked with Ms. Sylvia about the possibility of using that as a turnaround area, which she says that she's agreeable to work on with us, which would leave one way for the remainder or the smallest areas of the road, the most narrowest ways. We would also install more signage. So I guess from staff's perspective, we have perhaps found an alternative. Might not make everybody happy, but it's workable. And we were just going to come to look to you for further direction on the matter.
Looks like a good compromise to me, and we can always try it, and if we have problems, then they could bring them back to the board. If not, it may work out perfectly the next 20, 30 years.
The police chief was in favor of this?
I believe so. I won't speak for him, but I think...
Good. Sean's here. Yeah, good. Yeah.
Yes, sir. I didn't see no problem with it.
Okay.
Future, but from looking at it, I'll listen and get it.
Okay, so with what we have here, you're okay with that? Good deal.
Okay. We need a motion on this?
Well, again, two ways maybe. One was that we were going to suggest going ahead and putting this back out to the public just to see what people thought. The second was to, you know, if you didn't want to move forward with it anymore, not to, or third, if you liked it and loved it, go ahead and move on it. But
I think it's probably a good solution, but since we did send out a questionnaire and the overwhelming results was no, we want to leave it one way, I think we should send this out as a proposal and get the input on that.
Any other discussion?
Steve?
Well, originally, if I recall, the staff report from Public Works was the roads are too narrow to be two-way to begin with. And over 80% of the residents responded no, not two-way. And the agreement that you mentioned, I initially was told that was a council action. Was there any record of a council action that did that? To anybody's knowledge?
We didn't go back and investigate.
You know, if there was, I'd like to see it. I mean, over 80% of the residents say no. So.
Any other comment?
Yeah, I'm fine with the way this plan is, to try it. Let's try it.
John's recommendation to go back out with this plan, and which is not converting the entire road to two-way traffic, and I think what you're saying is it avoids the majority of any of the pinch points where it's really a major problem.
Is how difficult would it be to send our notice out to the owners that again, and just say, look, there's consideration being given for making this green part two-way and leaving the rest as it is one way. What are your, do you have objections, or do you support that?
Right, I think Valerie and I could work on some type of language that would easier to understand.
Yeah.
Require a motion?
I think we could do that by motion. It's a simple motion and
The motion or
directs the
probably a
staff.
consensus item, and just get consensus or.
Okay.
Are we okay with the consensus? I mean, yeah,
Yeah.
okay, Ron, do that.
Yeah.
There you go.
Okay, we
All
certainly
right.
will.
Wait a minute, what's the decision here?
Consensus, just go by consensus and go ahead and put it out. for
You
the-
can do a motion if you like.
Resurvey.
Yeah, and with this map, saying how would you feel about would you be in favor of or object to changing just the green portion to two-way? And leaving the rest, the red portion as it is?
And let the majority be the decision.
And let the majority be the decision.
Well, I felt we should have let the majority be the decision to begin with 2 months ago, but that's
Well,
okay.
Yeah.
That's my opinion, you asked my comment.
Okay, all right.
So,
All right. Well, I think we have at least a consensus. It may not be unanimous, but we have a consensus, which is not unanimous. So, Ron, go ahead and do that, and maybe get back to us at the next council meeting of everyone.
okay.
All right?
I mean, do we need to make it a motion, make my objection official?
We're good.
Okay,
We can note that in minutes.
So noted.
okay.
All right. Now, the next item B under 10 unfinished business is the golf course ordinance. And, I'm sorry, the golf cart ordinance. This is the ordinance that has been under consideration that affects the Rumbling Ball Resort in particular. Ron, do you have, you can report on this, please, and your recommendation on this?
All right, as y'all know from, I guess it was 2 meetings ago, Rumbling Ball Resort had asked us about the possibility of adopting a golf cart ordinance that would apply to the resort area. It would allow them to travel between their 5 or 6 subdivisions. However, it would require that those golf carts go out on state roads. The state has produced a model ordinance that towns can adopt, and once you adopt that, it does allow golf carts on town streets and state streets. So we have put together a model ordinance for your review, and we are requesting that you call for a public hearing on February 13th. Let me also state that there's a couple of changes that have been made since you last looked at the model ordinance. One, we had initially produced a map that would designate certain areas that you would not be allowed to drive on. That proved to be cumbersome. It's hard to write that into an ordinance. And so what we did is allow golf carts authorized for use on Buffalo Creek Road, Buffalo Shoals Road, and Winesap Road. Again, you're not allowed to go on roads greater than 35 miles per hour, but what that does do is allow golf carts around the little narrow turns right there by the resort entrance. That's a safety consideration, and it's something that y'all might want to think more about. We may be able to come up with some additional language that would help. There was also a suggestion that we specifically prohibit golf carts on Bills Creek and US 7464, and that was made by the police department, because if you get down to a certain area, you might just have the urge to keep on going, if this holds true. So those are certainly dangerous areas that we wouldn't want you on. The other thing is the decision on whether or not golf carts would be allowed during daylight and nighttime hours. In one section, we talk about operation during daylight hours only, and then the other section we said, well, if you have lights, then it might be okay to go ahead and be on the road after that, because we know a lot of those golf carts go down to the restaurant at night there in the resort. So again, that's something else that we would just like some direction on, to see which way y'all are sort of headed on that. Have had good conversations with the police department about the ability of us to manage the liability insurance, the review, the inspection of the golf carts, and then the I guess, given the, what am I looking for, the permits, sorry, I'll get it out in a minute. So issuing the permits, and they feel like they can handle that new responsibility, so. So again, we're here to answer any questions, and sort of see what direction you might have for us.
Do you feel like you'll be ready for a public hearing?
I think so. What you've got tonight is, I think, the meat of everything that we've discussed.
I have one thing, I guess I'd like to ask our police chief, having lived there and driven that road several times every day, when you come out of Roman Ball Resort and take the left there off of Buffalo Creek onto Buffalo Shoals, that first little curve up through there is tight. I've been run off the road a couple of times there. Fortunately, I was on a vehicle that was high enough that it didn't scrape the bottom, but if I'd been on a small car, I might would have had to have somebody pull me out, particularly with trucks coming around there. Sean, what are your thoughts on that section? Do you think that's advisable to have the golf carts go through there, or is there a way, maybe with signs or anything, to come on up and tell us what your thoughts are, and if there's anything you would add or maybe delete from what we're looking at.
Definitely some concerns there. I see what you're saying. If the cars come down through, we do speed enforcement there all the time, but we can't be there all the time. And if a car comes there greater than the posted 35 and meets a golf cart, you know, there are some potential for some accidents there. So that is a definite concern of the area. I think, speaking to Ron, last council meeting, is somebody proposed eliminating that section there. I talked to the chief of Spindale just today, and they've had this golf course ordinance in effect for quite a few years. And he said they've not had any incidents or any problems with it, which was reassuring to me.
Yeah.
But basically, to answer your question, yeah, there's some concerns there in the curves in certain areas. I don't know how you would eliminate that from it. The ordinance, as Ron said, maybe if you just pull that part out, I don't know.
Isn't that one of the areas that they want to be sure they've got the access through there?
Phil, do you have comment about that, what your thoughts are? So as you're coming down, especially if you're going toward the resort, you're going downhill and you're coming in that curve and you can't see the curve, and especially if you're someone from out of town, it would be easy to come into that curve faster than you would if you knew what the curve was like.
Yeah, two things. Number one, that's not Buffalo Shores, that's Buffalo Creek when you make, that's the
Okay.
extension of Buffalo Creek
All
on
right.
the left side. There's access through Winesap and then coming back down where you do not have to go on that section of Buffalo Creek. So in our initial recommendations, when we mapped it out, we circumvented that particular area by going up to Waterside, going up to Waterside and then coming down the other side to Buffalo Shoals, Buffalo Creek intersection.
Right.
So we really and truly felt the same way, is that we can easily circumvent that area without going through that turn of Buffalo Creek, which we felt the same thing, that it was questionable as far as safety.
Okay, so I guess we go to the public hearing and just knowing that's gonna be a concern, and if anybody has input that they wanna give us about that at the public hearing, we could, I guess we could decide then whether or not we include that.
Well, the other thing we could do is we could try to address it by developing some type of language where we say, in those sections, you will have to use a private road or system to move through that area or something. I mean, we can try to come up with some language that would do that, if you want us to.
Well, I was just thinking about in preparation for the public hearing, if you have, how bound are we to either one approach or the other going into the public hearing? We're
It's
not.
up to y'all. No.
Okay, all right.
I have one comment, Ron, and is that I think signage, one of the things we were talking about is that proper signage. When you put the signage there, said no golf carts beyond this point, on Waterside, so they have to make a left turn. So I think as far as this whole project, which we're aware of, I think we need proper signage.
Certainly.
And I think that would cover a lot of the issues.
And we would agree with you, yes.
Would the Rumman Ball Board be prepared to give us a recommendation one way or the other on that part of the road?
We already did,
Yeah, if your recommendation is what we had last month, it showed not using that part of the road, correct? Okay.
Correct. And
All right.
we still pretty much hold to that. because
Okay.
There's enough of ways, there's a way to get around, that with proper signage, definitely would not like to see, golf cart traffic go around that S curve.
Yeah, okay.
Phil, are you going to generate some maps or something over there at the resort that provide this kind of routing information for people who are attempting to travel back and forth in the resort with golf carts? Or how does that get communicated? Because this ordinance doesn't really do that. It's a little...
No, we've been thinking two things. Number one is you're right. We're definitely going to have documentation as far as what routes are planned. And like I said, the second thing is we're going to have the signage up there, which would indicate no cars past this point, and also have a left turn there so they can go up Waterside. So we definitely gave to proper signage and proper documentation.
Right.
Especially the signage.
Yep. Seems like when people would come in to get their vehicle registered, their golf carts registered, that'd be a good time to give them this map, and so they know where they can go and where they can't go, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
okay.
we would need to know from the DOT what kind of sign was allowed there, because they have some restrictions.
Okay. All right, so I'd like to call on someone to make a motion that we go ahead and have the public hearing on this particular ordinance on February 13th, 2018 at 6 o'clock or shortly thereafter to consider the adoption of a golf course ordinance for the town of Lake Lure. Somebody want to move?
I'll make that motion.
John? Okay.
Okay.
A second?
I'll second.
All right, Commissioner Moore? All right, any further discussion? If not,
Yes, I'd like to provide some input here. I've noticed several things in here I have questions on, and one, of course, normally our attorney reviews ordinances as to form, I believe. I don't know if you would be reviewing this as to legality and making sure that we're on safe ground.
I will.
But also with regard to the police department, it's quite a process that's laid out in here for you and your officers to inspect these golf carts, register them, provide a permit for them. We're going to have to decide the permit process, and we would have to establish the fee for that to be added to the schedule. There's also some, like on the roads here. Now, this just simply doesn't make sense to me how the road, Buffalo Creek Road, could have two different state road numbers. Or Buffalo Creek Road and Buffalo Shoals Road could have the same state road number. So there's obviously some problems there, possibly.
Actually, just let me tell you, that is straight from the NCDOT website. We double-checked that.
Okay, is that an error?
It's an error on
It
the...
doesn't make sense that the road with the same name has
It's
two
a
different state roads.
error on the state's part,
So
if
it
it
should
is.
be questioned.
So-
Talks about operators must be at least 16 years of age, but you must also have a valid license. I thought you couldn't even get a valid license to operate a vehicle unless you were 18, but you could get a learner's permit or restricted license prior to that, but you had to graduate. Did that change?
It's 16.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. I'm talking to the police chief. He mentioned the conflict about one section talking about sunrise versus sunset, where the other section talks anytime. That's a direct conflict and needs to be resolved. I don't mind the public hearing at that time, but I just, there's a lot of things that need to be addressed in here, and that hadn't even, I hadn't even talked about definitions and and typos at this point. I'm just looking at process. So I want to make sure that, well, we also have to develop the application form. We have to develop the inspection list, which needs to be in here. And there's a lot to be done to get this ready for the public hearing. So I just want to make sure that that's something that you can accommodate from what you're telling us, and it's not going to be an imposition on the police department to inherit this process. The other thing is, if we're only talking state roads, I guess it doesn't apply, but we also have the same issue of golf carts operating coming out of the Lake Lure Village Resort on Boys Camp Road and up Cutaway Road and up Deer Trail. So does that need to be included in this?
Do you think it would be wise to give you guys more time and maybe schedule the public hearing for March?
Possibly. I mean, if that's something, working with the town manager.
Yeah.
There were some questions when he presented, and that's what I addressed with him.
Yeah.
One of them come about as far as sunset, sunrise, or
Yeah.
they won't allow it at night because there's a section that talks about equipping it with headlights and tail lights and such, so.
Well, I think you're gonna get into a situation where it's gonna be hard to deny someone else, you know, if you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like where you're talking about cutaway.
Well, it needs to be covered though, or added.
Exactly.
Right.
Well, I was going to say, right now, it's not allowed, so if they're riding on public roads, it's against the law. So this ordinance has to be adopted in order for anybody to ride on public roads.
Like Steve, I'm not sure 30 days is enough. I think March
Yeah.
would be more realistic. Because it's got to go through, attorneys got to give all.
And maybe try to give us an update between.
Give us an
now and
update next regular town council meeting.
Yeah.
Then one thing in here that at the end, it says any other requirements as set forth by the Lake Lure Police Department for inspection. That would allow the police department to add requirements at will. And we don't want something that vague. We want a specified inspection list. That way all your inspections are the same and no one can question that and can't say that you favored this one or you know, acted differently towards this one because of some reason. So it needs to be specified, just like it is on automotive vehicles. So that way we protect you from scrutiny in that process.
So am I hearing a different concept to report maybe back here to the board on this at the next February meeting might be? So you guys want to withdraw your motion?
I'll withdraw my motion.
Somebody want to remake that motion to come back here?
I'll make the motion that we wait till the next town council meeting to review the new ordinance as written and worked on between the police department, our attorney and town manager. And then at that time, we'll put a date certain
on the public hearing.
hearing.
All right.
Makes sense. I'll second that.
You want to second that, John? Okay with that? Any further discussion, Steve?
No.
You good with that?
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay.
Thank
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, thank you. All right, moving on then to, and thank you, Chief, on to new business, item number 11. This is where we would go to a motion, if the commissioners want that, on the sign regulation, and then item B is on the land clearing and grading that we had the public hearing on. So would somebody like to make a motion in regards, first off, to the sign regulations?
Okay, I'll make a motion that we adopt ordinance 18-01-09, amending Article 10, sign regulations, section 92.155H of the zoning regulations, and that we find that this ordinance is consistent with the 2007-2027 comprehensive plan in that it assists in the effort to attract new business to the town center and service commercial nodes, policy ED-1-3.1.
All right, is there a second?
I second.
Second? All right, any discussion on this? No? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign? Okay, in a similar fashion, on the land clearing and grading amendment ordinance, somebody want to make that motion?
I can.
All right.
You want?
Commissioner Weber.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I make a motion we adopt ordinance 18-01-09A, amending Article 8, land clearing and grading, section 92.119 and 92.120 of the zoning regulations. I also find that this ordinance is consistent with the 2007-2027 comprehensive plan in that it assists in the effort to more effectively use provisions that were created to incorporate tree protection regulations into the zoning regulations so they apply to all development types, not just subdivisions. Policy NE-1-1.3 sub 3.
Okay, is there a second to that?
I'll second it.
Bob, seconds, any further discussion? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right, that brings us to item C under 11, and that is the Party Rock Fire FEMA reimbursement funds. Let's see, who? Ron Morgan. Ron, is that something you can come up and address, please?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. What you have in front of you, and hopefully you had it in your packet there, was as a result of the Party Rock Fire, November of 16, there was a declaration for a FMAG, or Fire Management Assistance Grant. A lot of paperwork, and here we are around a little over a year later. It finally came to fruition. I think some people figured it never would happen, but as you see, we were reimbursed for equipment operation time, which included our portion of it was mostly fire apparatus that was on the scene working a lot of it 24-hour days for days on end. We were reimbursed also for overtime of personnel. Regular hours was not accounted for. The overtime was eligible. And there was also some equipment time for police cars, the time that they spent evacuating residents. There was generators for the water pumps that Public Works had. They also had some front-end loaders. That's the type of equipment reimbursement that we had. So after spending many, many hours with the state representative, state emergency management, getting all the documentation together and waiting, what you see in front of you is the result. So we're here, or I'm here tonight representing the fire department, and there's more than the fire department involved here, but asking that this money that has been returned to the town be reimbursed to the fire department account or transmitted to the fire department account so that we could use these funds to accomplish a goal that's been recognized in our capital improvement fund in the future in replacing a 96 Dodge pickup truck that's in bad need of replacement. The big thing from this is we'd be able to replace this apparatus at no additional expense to the town using these funds that were unbudgeted and also using some donated funds that a lot of those were a result of the Party Rock Fire. This piece of equipment that we're hoping to replace was used extensively during the fire, so it's kind of appropriate that the funds go towards that, we think. This was kind of a result. It wasn't a quick decision. Once we learned that we should be receiving some money back, we went to our department, went to our members, our volunteers in our meeting, and said, this is what we're looking at. What would be your goals? What you think our number one priority would be? And this is what the department, the members decided they wanted to request.
Ron, looking at that, first, this is the first we've heard about another truck 2 days ago when we got our packet. It's the first time we've heard about this truck. But is this not, this 96, is this not one we just upgraded about 3 years ago, 4 years ago, and made it a brush truck?
No, sir. This truck we inherited when Fairfield ran Station 2 there. It originally was a brush truck. It was overweight. So when we inherited it, we had to discontinue it as a brush truck. A few years ago, we purchased a truck to, I think it's a 2013 Ford 550 that we made a brush truck. The one that we replaced was an old military truck, a pickup truck, a military truck.
So the 550 now is being used for a brush
truck? The 550 is being used for a brush truck and a medical response truck.
Why do we need two trucks for this purpose?
It's different purposes. The 550 is a brush truck and medical response truck. This truck is a rescue truck. We're required by the state with our current certifications as fire department, ISO, and rescue certification that we have to have and carry certain equipment to be rated and certified at those levels. And you can't do it on one truck. So every truck that we have is jam-packed with equipment that we not only need for certification, but need and use regularly on responses. This particular truck serves basically as an equipment truck that we respond on motor vehicle accidents, all kinds of rescues, water rescues, and so it carries mainly equipment. And what we're asking to do is replace this truck that was purchased, used by Fairfield, I forget the year, but it had over 100,000 miles on it when they purchased it. And so we're wanting to replace it with a better equipment truck.
And how much is this new brush truck you're looking at? There's no total.
Well, it's not a brush truck, and if it's
Or
worded in there, that
medical
was a
rescue.
misrepresentation, but it's an equipment truck.
Right.
What we have come up with is we had to have a definite number that we knew could make work. So if you take the 35,000 and change and the 18,000, it comes up to a little around 52. I'm going from memory, so correct me if you know the exact number, but it's around 52 or 53. We have checked, and on a fleet plan, we can purchase a new chassis with a similar box, and that's one option. So we know that we can do that. Another option is to purchase a good used built rescue truck, which is kind of what the guys were favoring. But we had to do it in a manner that we presented. We knew we could do something. But the used truck market, not knowing if it's going to be approved or when it's going to be available, we don't know what trucks are going to be available. We have found some good trucks in this price market used.
Yeah, and this is just me personally, but with our budget concerns and such, I'd just like to delay this decision until we have a little bit more discussion, maybe our February 7th meeting. Because like I said, I just found out about it, and I just think we need a little bit more time and a little bit more facts. I'd like to see pictures of what you want to purchase and some more facts on this truck.
Okay, and be glad to give you that. The original form had a little bit more facts in there, but and here again, we're not asking for any additional funds, not asking for any additional, everything we would do would be based on funds that we already have in the donations account and funds from this FMAG fund, so it wouldn't be any additional budgeted money. And as far as, we can give you some samples of what we might would do. The other thing that's not in here is, I didn't want to draw this out too much, but if we're able to purchase a good used rescue truck, that would allow us to also use this truck in a classification for ISO as a service truck. Currently, we're having to use an engine to meet that requirement. If we're able to do this, it would allow us, technically we would be incorporating another truck towards our ISO rating, which will help us down the road in the future.
Did that have a bearing on the new ISO rating that we just received?
The current service truck we have, which is a 1990 model engine, had a very significant bearing on our rating that we have. One of the things that we come up short on our rating is we did not have a reserve engine, which cost us some points. By converting the use of this apparatus to a service truck, freeing up the engine would become a reserve engine, which would accomplish more points in the system as it's designed right now. So we're asked, this money for this truck would fill a lot of niches that we need, not just for ISO, but for everyday operations and so on and so forth.
So I'm understanding you'd still keep the 96 truck?
No, it will be gone. It's
So-
got issues.
What would you do with it?
We would turn it over for surplus property, and it'd be sold on gov deals, I assume. That's the way we typically do that.
I've got one question about the ISO ratings. You say, I know you get points for different things. Well, as you get those points, you have to reach, I guess, a certain benchmark before you get an improved insurance rating. Is that right?
When we get our final score, then it falls on a chart, and that
Yeah.
determines what the final insurance rating is.
Okay,
yes.
and so each, that score may be, just for sake of numbers, 100 to 120 gets you an A rating, or whatever.
Or whatever, yes, sir.
All right, so how far, all right, whatever rating we got the last time, did we surpass that by a lot? Are we up close to the next rating, or are we just, are we at a B plus, or are we at a B minus?
We achieved a 4 by just a little bit. The paperwork that went in, the state does the rating, sends it to ISO. The paperwork that went in from the state to ISO, we were a good solid 4. ISO got their hands on it, did some unfortunate tweaking. They didn't see it the way the state did, so we achieved the 4, but not by a lot.
Okay.
So that's why, as fire chief, and y'all have heard me, some of y'all's been here a while, heard me constantly, we've got to improve because there's things that we have no control over. Manpower is a big one. If you look at our last ISO rating in 2001 to now, our manpower response numbers have went down, and that's mainly because people just, there's a lot to volunteering at the fire department, and less people like to do that. So we have no control of those numbers. So the things that we can control and improve, those points offset other points that we may lose. So if we're not constantly moving forward, there's no such thing as really sitting still. So that's
Okay,
why every
so
time we get a chance, we
If
want
we're
to
a 4
improve.
now, a 3 is better than a 4, or a 5 is
Yes,
better?
it's kind of like
3 is
golf.
better.
The lower the
Okay.
score, the better.
All right.
The system
So-
is from 1 to 10.
Okay, so between 4 and 3, where are we?
We're much closer, we're at the upper end of a 4. We're closer to a 5 than we are a 3. Much closer to a 5 than we are a 3.
Okay.
So,
A 3 is a Asheville city stuff.
That's
Full-time.
probably beyond,
We-
will be beyond our reach.
To give you a comparison, we're a 4, Forest City's a 4, Rutherford's a 4, so we're kind of in that category. And we're, again, I'm not necessarily shooting for the 3, we're working towards maintaining the 4 is what our ultimate goal is to not lose points and drop back to a 5.
How often do they score?
Their goal now is 5 to 7 years, so it's, and it's already been over 6 months, so.
Well, like I said, my concern is $1 is $1, and I just want a little more time to get it on the weekend, and I'm supposed to make a decision this morning.
No,
I'm sitting here looking at departments here, and I don't even know what departments. It says item number 102 is $237, but then I go line item 353.
Go back to page 82 in your book.
82's got
Or
it.
forward, I'm sorry.
Forward.
That shows the application and who got what.
Right, us.
And what department. And if I may interject, as I read this, and Sam, help me out if I'm wrong, I see basically 2 different actions here and 2 different budget amendments. The first one is to put the money in the accounts based on the application, which has already been received, and we should go ahead and approve 210. 211, if you want to delay, is the purchase of the truck.
I agree with that.
Yeah, yeah. And we do need more time to digest.
So we ought to separate them. So I make a motion that we approve budget amendment 210.
Yeah. And hold one budget.
Well, wait until we separate the item.
Who wants to
yes.
second that?
I'll second that.
All right, Bob's, all right. Any discussion? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right.
Then I
now-
make a motion that we delay, how long you think?
Well, till, I'd say till at least March meeting.
Okay. Delay budget amendment 211 until the March town council meeting.
All right.
Correct.
Your second to
I'll
that?
second that.
Second to that, Bob? Any discussion? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
So
All right,
just
thank
looking
you.
for direction, and I don't think I have in front of me all the information that you have there based on your conversation. So what you need from me is you're just wanting more justification for the replacement of this apparatus. Is
And
that-
also what truck you're looking at. I mean, if we're buying a used truck, is it a 2-year used truck or is it an 8-year used truck? And the body you're gonna put on it, what kind of work body you're gonna have on it? Is it strictly mechanical or has it got fire relief on it? And I just,
We can give you some generalities, but dealing with used apparatus, if we say this is the truck we want, if it's approved, that truck may very well be sold. So that one wouldn't be, but we can give you some generalities as the
What
type
you're
of
looking
piece of
for,
equipment
what
we're
you,
looking at.
yeah.
Yes,
What you'd
if that
like
makes
to do.
sense.
Yeah.
I guess.
Okay. Thank you, Ron, very much. And thank you for the effort to put together whatever the voluminous paperwork it was. I mean, that could take a year, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Appreciate that.
Yeah, have a good evening.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, that brings us to item D. This is a proposal for professional services, pavement condition survey. David, is that your item? Would you come forward and tell us a little bit about this?
Having a good night, isn't it?
Yep, he's on the spot here.
You batting 1,000 so far.
Yeah. He's gotta go back to work after
It's
this.
just bedtime.
Hush. What this boils down to is that we're asking for the board to give Ron the approval to approve a contract with Labella Associates, This company used to be USI out of Charlotte. It's an engineering firm that goes around and does pavement rating studies of all the streets in town.
Has that just changed?
Huh?
Does that labella just change?
I think in the last year, because when I looked it up, trying to talk to them, I was still looking up USI, and I got the number and called and talked to them, and they told me that it had changed from USI to labella. They had bought USI out, but I have used this company personally in the past, when I was with another town. When it was brought up in the past, I was kind of skeptical, you know, because they said they can do this and do that and give you all of this information to go by. And for the previous board that I was dealing with then said, you know, let's do it. Well, they did. They came out, they done the study, they rated all the streets. When we got the information back, I was very impressed. They went out and rated every street, 101. I mean, it gives you a PCR rating from 0 to 100. I don't know how y'all feel about street paving, but that has been a nightmare for me in the past. Because Bob Cameron says, why did you pave Kevin Cooley's road?
Yeah, Kevin.
John Morris says, why did you pave Weber's road?
No, I want my driveway done.
Yeah. I mean, you see where I'm going?
Yeah, I got you.
And not only that, I mean, you have residents in town that say, my street needs paving. And a lot of them do. I agree with that.
Right.
But me living on this street saying it needs to be paved doesn't mean that you living on that street doesn't need it worse. This is a tool that rates the streets from 0 to 100. So when I'm standing here before you 6 months from now, and I've got a resident pitching a fit because I didn't pave their street, I've got something to go back and say, listen, the reason we didn't pave your street is because your rating was a 42. The street we paved was a 21. If we don't take care of this now, we're gonna spend more money. So it gives you a tool to work with to show you what needs to be done, the way it needs to be done, an estimated price of what it will cost to have it done, and a schedule as to their opinion. It's not 100%, things change. But I used this same system for the last 10 years where I was at. And it is super good. And you've got something that you can show people. This is why I did this street or I didn't do that one. And it normally seems to help and there's good justification in it. So I personally think it's a really good tool. I think at the end of it, from what I understand, Lake Lure spends approximately $60,000 a year on street repaving. I think at the end of this, you're gonna see that number is way low. They'll come back and tell you what it would take to actually bring your streets up to standards, and it'd be a lot of money.
What tool do we use now? What tool do we use now?
Well,
we don't have one, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you.
I got
not knocking what's been done in the past. I wasn't here. But
when I first looked at this, I thought, well, better off spending this $12,000 paving the street.
Right.
But then, from your explanation, I think it's a good idea. I think it makes sense.
Well, I was just like what you said, John.
Yeah.
When the idea was brought to me, because I came from a place where I spent $40,000 a year on streets, which is nothing. And I'm like, I can take this $10,000 and do a little more to the streets.
Yeah.
You know, but after the report came back and I seen, it was on paper, seen in front of me, what I had and how far behind we actually was. And then all the commissioners and everybody else seen the same thing, but they started doing things a little different, you know. And so.
What is the half-life of this study? In other words, they go out, they do this assessment, they grade the roads and prioritize and so forth. Right. So how long is that good for?
Well, that depends on a lot of different factors. It depends on how much money the town of Lake Lure sinks into this, and how quick that you're able to do that. You know, if they come back and they say, okay, you need to be spending $150,000 to bring your streets up to par, and you choose not to do that, then naturally, those streets is further down the list are gonna get worse.
Well, that's what I was getting at. In other words, a street gets graded, points
Right.
assigned to it.
Right.
Okay, and that's this year. And so
Right.
you and the capital budget go out there, and when you gotta make a decision
Right.
next year about a street,
Right.
you look at the points and you say, oh, we gotta do this street instead of that street. So then in year two, we still got the same study,
Yeah,
and now
that's-
we've got more streets we gotta
Yeah.
do. And now you're looking at the same points on an evaluation that was done 2 years ago.
Yes, sir.
And you say, well, this one got this points. At what point does the original evaluation have to be redone so the points, grades that are done are still valid, is what I'm asking you?
That company suggested that every 8 to 10 years.
Oh, that long? Okay. I'm surprised.
That you redo it. And you'll start to see, if you do this, you will start to see as years goes on, that will change.
Mhm.
Because I have Boys Camp, for an example. I'm just throwing that name out there as being a good street at this point. Okay? Everything's fine and dandy next year. Well, you come up through there, all the ratings are great on that thing. The town decides to extend water all the way up Boys Camp Road, and you tear the street all to pieces. Put a line in, patch it back. Well, guess what? That street that's tore all to pieces is not in that.
No, it's not.
So it gives you a tool to work off of.
Okay.
It's not set in stone, because I've looked at the study in the past and said, you know, this street over here is a 0 rating. It's terrible. Has no traffic on it. It leads to nowhere. But I have this street over here that has a PCR of rating of 10 that has tons of traffic on it. You know, will I look over this one that has no traffic on it to take care of this and it's loaded with traffic? Most certainly. That would be my recommendation.
It makes our decisions objective rather than subjective, and
Yes.
it takes the,
Takes a lot of the guesswork out of it.
Take the guesswork out, and the citizens who maybe want a street, then they'll understand how we set the priorities. And we
Well,
didn't set them, somebody, an expert
For
did.
years,
Yeah.
I dealt with residents and with board members and mayors and town managers and says, why are you doing this street? Why are you doing that? You know, and they're good questions, but you have to come up with a reasoning for that. If I've got it here in front of me where I show you that 99 other streets in this town are worse than John Moore's, then you can see that.
Sure.
You know, and
Okay.
it's hard to argue that point, and it makes it a whole lot better.
Good.
Now,
I think it's a good
you
idea.
get a Microsoft program or app to work with a disk.
There is a
then it-
disk and a
the
program
G-
and
it
all
works
that.
with the GIS as well?
Yes,
Okay, so you get that as part of this money?
yes.
And there's no other costs? or-
No other
And it's a
cost.
program we can use and not pay for, and then
Right.
we're stuck?
Yep.
But we can only use that program to access that database. We can't update it.
Right.
Every time you pave a road, that road should move, that PCR number should
Right.
change
Right.
for that road. And we can't update this. So you always have to go back to the original survey and the original PCR numbers.
Yes.
Now, what about,
I'll tell you what
what if there's software updates?
Right.
Do we have to pay for software updates for this application?
We never did. Now, that may be something that is available. I'm not sure. I don't have a definite answer for you on that, Stephen. I tell you what I did, that I could show anybody, is we had hard copies as well as a computer program and a disk. This year I paved this street, this year I paved this street. I marked them on there, what streets I paved from point A to point B in 2017. And I worked my way down that list, and I had that hard copy with me all the time.
Right.
So I knew what I had done and the goals that I was working toward. And I could look at that instead of guessing if I agreed that the next 5 streets needed to be addressed. That I had numbers there to go by that were close, not exact. But I had numbers to go by there that said, this street needed a full depth replacement, this street needed to be overlaid,
Right.
this street needed crack filling. And when you asked me for 5 years worth of budget stuff, I've got it right there in front of me instead of trying to call 14 contractors out here to give me quotes. You know, cause it's hard to get them to do for budget numbers.
Well, you see the questions, we're just asking because we have been burned on other stuff.
Right, yeah, and I understand completely.
I totally agree with it, having any kind of a management tool that'll make your job easier and a way, and to help planning. Of course, my concern is I don't want to see us get sucked into a money drain like that boat permit database.
Right.
Where there might be software updates and so on. And the other thing is, and I'm not trying to be funny when I say this, but if you've used this system for 10 years, why can't you go out and do this?
Well,
don't you have enough experience at that you could probably do this too?
I can go out here and I can look at the streets, and you may agree with me, Stephen. You think David's done this for 20 years, I agree with him completely. Is everybody else in this town that don't know me gonna agree with that? I don't think so.
No, but what's important, of course, is the council that budgets the money.
Well, I agree, I do. At the end of the day, listen,
And to
it's a
figure
tool
that
there
out.
that's out there, and if the board is not willing to agree to it, then I understand, no hard
Yeah.
feelings.
And I don't mean that the citizens aren't important, I just mean that we would be the ones to explain that to the citizens, why we picked this road to pay the money for it, as opposed to a different one. But which is the same thing that's gonna happen with this report. So, I mean, it's not treated any differently, but, you probably have enough experience that you could do it just as well. You might not be able to provide the software, the computer application, but that might be something that might be readily available for a cheaper sum. It's a Microsoft computer application that could be probably purchased. So.
All right, well, would anybody?
Good thoughts.
I would entertain a motion if anybody would like.
Let me have one more question. Does the company that we're talking about here, do they have capabilities beyond what you have other than the program? I don't care about a program. You can list something like this out on a ledger. But to assess the streets, do they have something that you don't have that makes their recommendations more valid?
Well, the only thing I can tell you is that they have, from what they have told me, have done hundreds of these street studies, so they have a lot of experience in it.
Okay.
Going out and rating the streets, knowing what to look at.
They have a huge database.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so that's where my information comes from, and that I have personally used them in the past, and was very impressed, because I was very skeptical myself to start with. But
Well, we have to supply a vehicle and driver to assist them in the field data collection.
Right.
So it's obviously riding around and actually viewing the roads, and they may use some kind of an instrument or two here to determine something, but. So.
I have a lot of confidence in David's experience and his experience with this particular asset here, so I'll make the motion that we approve this $11,900 for the professional services with Labella Associates.
All right, motion by John Moore, is there a second?
I'll second that.
John Kilby. All right, any further discussion? Not hearing any. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Thank you very much,
Thank you.
David.
Thank you, David.
Good job tonight. Okay, that brings us to item E on our, this would be 11E on our agenda. This is, deals with the Board of Adjustment, and we had a couple of vacancies on the Board of Adjustment, and I understand both of these are the alternates or standby positions, and Andy, we've had a couple of people step forward to, as I understand it, to volunteer. One of them, however, I think we know has reconsidered due to the schedule of meetings and not being available to be in town. So we have, what do we have, two applications for consideration in our packet. The first one is from Mr. James Nordberg. I know Mr. Nordberg, he's a resident in the resort, lives over on Whitney Boulevard. And the second one is from Al Joyner, who lives on a Cutaway Road.
I know him.
You know him, and I think Commissioner Kilby can speak to both of them as well and their qualifications.
Okay, and Mr. Norberg, I spoke with him specifically, he's a resident of the resort, and I would like to see some more people. But we're losing Ron Erickson, who's a resident of the resort, and I'd like to see some representation there. So I had talked to Jim, and he told me to, he has reconsidered, and he does spend about 4 months out of the year, 3 to 4 months at his place in Michigan. And he actually called Kevin, he called me today too, and he just has decided that at this point, at this time, he wants to be involved, but that he thinks it's best that he not commit to that at this point right now. So he's asked to withdraw his name.
Can we do the other one just by acclamation?
Yeah, Al, I've known Al for 25 years. He's a great guy and a businessman, and lived at a place here for years, and real active in the community, full-time resident. So he'll be a good addition.
I agree with him.
Okay, so we can do this by acclamation.
Well, let's do a quick motion.
You want a motion?
I'm sorry.
Can we do it by acclamation? It's an appointment, I think.
Well, we do it by motion.
Yeah.
Okay. Do it by
John will
motion.
make the motion here.
Yeah.
I'll make a motion that we accept Al Joyner for the alternate position, one of the alternate positions on the Board of Adjustment.
Which date?
2019, the one expiring in
Yeah, the
19.
one
I'll second.
Yeah.
I'll second it for the December 31st, 2019 position.
Okay, so I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. I would add in this discussion that I had, knowing this, I had reached out to somebody I thought might be qualified and interested, and he's sitting in the back of the audience, Mr. Win Hardy, who's been very active with me on the chamber board, and I think very highly of Mr. Hardy. And
I do too, and he's retired.
he
said
seems
didn't
to
have
be
anything
shaking his head, or,
All caught up.
So Andy, if you would please get Mr. Hardy an application.
We can take nominations
From the floor? Can we
like
do
that.
this?
Yeah, we could do.
Well, we still have the police here to keep him from leaving if you want to give him the application.
Well, I mean, I would, if that's appropriate, we've done
I think
this.
we've done it before.
You can
All
do
right.
it that way, it's no
Yeah.
problem.
I'll make a motion that we appoint Mr. Hardy to the other position.
I'll second that motion.
Too late.
Too late.
We're not giving
All
you
right.
time to change your mind.
And
That's-
assuming there is no discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Well, there he is.
If we give you till next month, you might change your mind like this other guy.
That's right.
I'll teach you to show up.
So, do we still need to sign our form, Andy, for you and turn it in? Okay.
All right. All right, that brings us to item F, which is the appointment of an interim town clerk. And here we have, I think Ron Nally will lead the discussion on this. This is to replace, unfortunately, Andy, who's leaving us. So Ron, where are we going here?
Yeah, as y'all know, of course, we're losing Andy. We hate to see her go. However, we've got to keep the day-to-day operations moving. It's my recommendation to town council to appoint Michelle Jolly as interim town clerk until the position is filled. We've received 12 applications. We're ready to go through that hiring process. At the end of the staff's comments there, you'll note I've probably hired 4 or 5 different clerks in my career. Because you have the appointment authority for a town clerk, I've always invited the boards to participate in some type of hiring process. Some boards choose not to be involved, some choose to be somewhat involved, and some actually like to be an interview panel, sort of sit there and talk about the position itself with the prospective clerk. So again, I was going to ask for some direction from y'all about how much you would like to participate. But again, the important part tonight is to go ahead and ask you to appoint Michelle as interim town clerk.
We have a motion to this effect?
I'll make that motion that we appoint Michelle Jolly as our interim town clerk for the town of Lake Lure until the town clerk position is filled.
Motion by Commissioner Cameron, and a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Kilby.
Quick question. Michelle, are you sure you want this?
Okay, all right. All right, very well. So Assuming we have no further discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Now, let's just try to give Ron a little
An answer,
direction.
yeah.
I looked at his thing, his discussion here, and there was almost like a option A and option B, and there could be many other options. One would be for us to just simply appoint some representative to work with Ron from the board and let Ron go ahead and conduct the interview and hiring process and bring us a recommendation and a reason why. And the other one would be for us to be involved in the process from day one as an interview body. How many candidates did you say?
We have 12. We will
12?
send out questionnaires and then narrow that field down to 3 or 4.
I discussed with Ron, sort of how the process might go. And typically on a position like this, there's an initial screening of all the applicants. Usually you come down to a short list based on qualifications you have in writing, and then you invite candidates in for an interview and make a final selection. So there's a couple of steps here that the commissioners could be involved or not involved in. So
My recommendation is just to allow whichever commissioners or yourself, whoever wants to be involved, and it's like myself, I trust you guys or trust Ron. I don't need to be involved in that.
yeah. Other than approving the final
That's correct.
recommendation as a council. Any other commissioners
Whoever
want
wants to be involved.
to weigh in or be involved, and to what extent?
I'd like to see the last 2 or 3.
Yeah, that would be my feeling.
Yeah.
Down to the last 3.
So we'd be,
Yeah.
and
Then be
Commissioner
involved at
Ledbetter,
that point.
what's your?
Yeah, I'd like to see the last 3 applicants and their applications and whatever resumes they may have.
And would we then, seeing those 3, if the next step was to interview candidates, would the commissioners want to participate in that?
Well, let's wait till we see the 3.
Yeah.
Okay, take it a step at a
Let's
time.
evaluate once we get the 3.
Does that give you enough direction, at least to proceed until we meet again?
Well, again, for this type of position, we would do a scaled-back assessment center. And so as long as we can get that step within that assessment center process, I'm fine with it. So again, it will be part of that process that we go through in hiring that position, if that makes sense.
I don't understand, a scale-back assessment center. What's that?
Yeah, the assessment center process is similar to what I went through when you hired me. It's been similar to what we did with David. We have an assessment center process that we go through in order to hire key positions. And that's to make sure that, because we'll use the town clerk as an example, it affects many different departments. It's not just myself. So I like to get others involved in that process. So you might have an interview panel made up of department heads. You would have perhaps an interview panel made up of staff that would work directly with the town clerk. You would have an interview panel perhaps made up of yourself, that you would look at the last 2 or 3 candidates, and then you would have a final interview with myself, since I work day to day with that person. So those are sort of the steps. If you're fine with me putting the 3 reviews, or that review of the 3rd, or the 3 top candidates into that process, I'm good.
Okay, that's the process that you recommend?
That's what I'll be developing.
That many
That's correct.
different levels? Okay. All right. I'm okay with it, just speaking for me.
Okay. You all okay? Okay, so that's just guidance for you.
Great.
So
Yes, thank you.
You would do that, okay. All right, and then the final item that we added to the agenda was item G under 11, and this is proposed architectural services agreement for the design of the public restrooms, which was our #1 project on the capital improvements list here. And let's see, who's going to, Shannon, I guess you've been the point person. Shannon Baldwin has been the point person on the whole restroom project, and has sort of been the orchestrator of meetings and discussions, so.
Happy to do it. This is an outgrowth, as you know, from the process that we use to develop and adopt a site plan for Morse Park. And one of the charges in that process was to make sure you find the place for the restrooms, and you budgeted the money for that. So we developed the plan, adopted the plan, town council adopted the plan. And so one of the follow-up steps was to make sure we get moving on this restroom project and make sure that we get this created or developed improvements in place early summer. So that's a charge, and that's what we've been moving toward.
Yeah. How much you anticipate this architectural work will cost?
Well, we've got a not to exceed $13,000. That includes the design. It also includes construction management, so they will help in the bidding process for construction. They also serve as overseer as the construction moves forward for the project. We have $90,000 budgeted for the project itself. And Ron and I were talking before this, usually you don't see these numbers go beyond 10%, which would be about 9. But there are some other things added in there. There's some extra design. I think Destination by Design wanted some to participate to make sure there's coordination with the other project on the marina. And then there's about $1,000 buffer in there just to make sure if we get into this project and the design goes over the 90, then you're probably looking closer to 10% of what this would be. So if it ends up being, say, 130, then you're looking at a 10% number. That would have to be split between 2 fiscal years, 90 this year, maybe a little bit more next year. But we don't know. And the contract they've given you does not go up to 13, it goes up to 11.6. And so we've rounded that up in case they come up with higher numbers, then we don't have to come back to you.
Okay, I think we have got an architect involved before where there was maybe some confusion over who was given the direction, and the cost got a little bit above where they should have gotten.
Yes.
Do we have one person assigned to give this firm the direction and be responsible for be the responsible party between the architect and the town?
Well, I think I would be on point, but I'm working with a steering committee, and that steering committee is made up of Commissioner Weber, Mayor Cooley, the chair and vice chair of the Parks and Rec Board, and your town manager.
Okay.
So I'm working in tandem with them.
Okay. All right. That's good. I'm comfortable with that.
And be glad to answer any questions.
Well, I wanted to add for the benefit of the council, during the steering committee meeting, Don Kaysen was present, since we are dealing with the Welcome Center here, and he is in favor of this proposal, so everything's good there. The proposed location for the restrooms would be on the far side of the Welcome Center, on that half of it, towards the marina, and there would be an exterior entrance going into it, so it could be accessed during nighttime hours. But also it could be accessed from the Welcome Center during daytime. All that's in the works. One thing I noticed that I hope wasn't misunderstood or misinterpreted is where he talks about the men's and women's restrooms, approximately 5 fixtures in each. And I know that's what we talked about, but looking at the men's, that could be 3 urinals and only 2 stalls. When I said 5 fixtures, I was thinking stalls. Right. That's what I was looking at, is at least 5 stalls in each. And then the urinals would be additional fixtures, I understand. So I don't know if we need to clarify that with him and in the design phase, and if that adds anything to the cost of the design or the architectural drawings. But that's what my intent was when I said 5 fixtures.
I don't anticipate there being an increase in design for adding another, if we need to add another fixture. Ron may want to weigh in. I don't see it going up.
No, I think this is, design is to come, so.
That's right.
Yeah.
Okay.
We've got a lot of leeway there.
And probably ought to say that the process we've kind of adopted for this is the steering committee, which I left out Don Kaysen, which is part of the TDA. That's an important piece, but with this group, with 2 members of council and then 2 members of Parks and Rec Board of TDA, the town manager and myself, we've got a good group that can keep everyone informed as we move forward with this program.
We don't want any slip-ups like it's been in the past.
Yes, sir, Mr. Kelly.
So, Mr. Mayor, I make a motion that we approve the architectural services agreement with JB Plaster Architect in an amount not to exceed $13,000 and to authorize the town manager to execute the agreement.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Bob? Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Shannon. Good work. All right, so that kind of brings us to our next to final item on the agenda, and that's a closed session. So I have a motion to go into closed session for the purpose of discussing property acquisition and to address the amended agenda item here to also discuss employee
So you want a
issues.
motion?
Yeah, would you make
Okay.
that motion?
I make a motion that we enter into closed session in accordance with GS 143-318.11 sub A sub 5 for the purpose of discussing property acquisition, and GS 143-318.11 sub A sub 6 for the purpose of discussing personnel matters.
I'll second that.
Second, Bob. Any discussion? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
May I ask a question?
Yes, ma'am?
I know I'm probably out of order, but I would like to ask, is what has become known as a strip mall, I'm sure you know what I'm talking about, next to Dr. Birch's office?
Right.
Is that going to be cleaned up and fixed up before September? Because that is really a big eyesore. Is that going to be taken care of?
Ron, it's my understanding that we're moving ahead on that.
I'm gonna try.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you. All right.
I got a little bit.
Yeah.